the Senate as applicable. Unless the Budget Committee, speaking through its chairman, asserts that the amendment causes a violation of the Budget Act, the chair will
voting
not
on the big
so
beautiful
hold.
bill, guys.
The point of order is not well taken.
Mr. President,
I recognize the Democrat leader.
I appeal the ruling of the chair, and I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are ordered. The appeal is debatable for 1 hour under this act. Sorry, is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
Mr. President.
I recognize the Democrat leader.
Mr. President, first, let me thank everyone who stayed overnight to take part in the reading of this bill. My colleagues, the cloakrooms, the floor staff, everyone who made it possible. I would say this to the cloakrooms and particularly our great floor staff. You are all amazing. You're the unsung heroes of what goes on here. Without you, none of us could do our work. So thank you for your dedication, your excellence, your perseverance, your strength. Now, Senate Democrats will now commence 4 parliamentary inquiries to show the hypocrisy of what Republicans are trying to do here in the Senate, and to expose how they're trying to hide the true costs of their billionaire giveaways to the American people. I thank my colleagues who will speak momentarily, as well as all of my colleagues who have come to the floor as we debate this bill before Vote-A-Rama. So before I yield to them, I just want to hammer home exactly what is going on here in the Senate for the people back home.
Hey, blessed to be blessed.
Republicans are about to pass the single most expensive bill in U.S. history to give tax breaks to billionaires while taking away Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and good-paying jobs for millions of people. CBO just this morning said it will explode the debt by $3.3 trillion. And they said it will likely cost more over time.
What's up, Gillian?
Closer to $4 trillion. Rather than be honest with the American people about the true costs of their billionaire giveaways, Republicans are doing something the Senate has never done before, deploying fake math and accounting gimmicks to hide the true cost of their bill. Look, Republicans can use whatever budgetary gimmicks they want to try and make the math work on paper, but you can't paper over the real-life consequences of adding tens of trillions to the debt. Sky-high interest rates, higher borrowing costs for cars, for homes, for credit cards.
Guys. Shout out to everybody in the building. Double tap that screen, get the likes up.
Everywhere they look. Americans' household wealth will be permanently hobbled. There aren't enough budgetary gimmicks in the world to change that fact. And for what? Why are Republicans doing this? So that billionaires can pay less in taxes while tens of millions lose their health care benefits and pay more for everyday expenses. I now yield to my colleague from Oregon for the first parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Oregon.
Parliamentary inquiry.
The senator will state his inquiry.
When the House bill was first laid before the Senate, was the
Congress to vote on the big beautiful bill, guys. Get those lights up. Double tap that screen.
Baseline under Section 257
Subscribe to the channel if you're
of
new.
the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985.
Yes.
Thank you.
I recognize the Democrat leader.
I rise for a parliamentary inquiry.
The senator will state his inquiry.
Has the Senate ever used a baseline other than current law baseline under 257 for enforcement of budget points of order, including under Section 313 of the Budget Act, during the consideration of a reconciliation measure? Has it ever been used?
No.
Yeah, that's Chuck Schumer. You already know. The House is looking to vote on Trump's big, beautiful bill, guys. This is live.
Recognize the senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, when the Republican majority is going to the floor, what they're doing is hiding trillions of dollars in handouts to corporations and the wealthy. Trillions of dollars. If you measure this bill the way we measure every other reconciliation bill, it simply doesn't comply with the rules. But the Republican majority has figured out a trick. that allows them to sidestep the parliamentarian, violate the Congressional Budget Act, and lift the filibuster for Trump's entire legislative agenda in one fell swoop. It is fakery. The budget numbers are a fraud, but the deficits will be very real. The prospect of a catastrophic debt spiral is very real. The hardship this terrible bill is going to inflict on tens of millions of Americans will be very real.
Remember,
So
Elon said no to this bill, guys. Let's get the likes up. Double tap that screen, guys.
The title of the Senate substitute, which the chairman asserts complies with its instruction, rely on the use of two distinct baselines: current policy for taxes and current law for health provisions like Medicaid.
Yes.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Washington.
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry.
The senator will state their inquiry.
Are the remaining 9 titles of the Senate substitute scored by CBO using a current law 257 baseline?
Yes.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I've been here a long time. Not only have I been the budget chair, I am the longest serving Democrat on that committee. And in my 33 years here in the United States Senate, things have never worked this way, where one party so egregiously ignores precedent, process, and the parliamentarian, and does that all in order to wipe away trillions of dollars of costs for a bill that could just be the most expensive legislation this body ever passes. Forget Senate procedure.
And that's what Elon said as well,
Mr.
guys.
President, has never worked that way. I taught preschool, and I'll tell you, even our littlest kids knows the difference between a trillion and zero. It doesn't take a preschooler to tell you they're using magic math, or that you can't just ignore the rules you don't like. How many times have my colleagues cried about the debt? How many times have they told me, I know you want to invest in childcare, Patty, but we got to get this budget under control. But now that it's tax cuts for billionaires and corporations, suddenly the budget doesn't matter anymore. Suddenly the rules do not matter anymore. Suddenly a couple trillion goes away with a sprinkle of fairy dust. And bypassing the parliamentarian and president isn't really bypassing if you just close your eyes and just pretend real hard. Have you no shame? If you think you can look the American people in the face and tell them we have to bring down the debt after passing what might be the most expensive bill in history, if you think you can do that and then be taken seriously, well, you know what? If you believe that, maybe you are foolish enough to think that zero and a trillion are the same. Mr. President, I can't believe this is what we're doing today, because I can tell you right now, if this happens, we will all laugh you out of the room, because we have never seen anything like this. Not in my time here in the Senate, not in my time on this planet. We are not going to let anyone forget that you're trashing the rules in order to pass this egregious bill.
They say the most expensive bill in history, guys. Wow.
I recognize the senator from Oregon.
Thank you. I want to share a couple of comments with my colleagues, including my Republican colleagues, because I've made these points on the floor, but generally the floor is empty, and some of you are here now. In 1974, 100 senators agreed on reconciliation as a fast-track, filibuster-free, but only for one purpose: reducing the deficit. It had 3 pillars: reduce the deficit over a 10-year period. Second, reduce the deficit in each and every year after that 10-year period, in each title of the bill. And third, use honest numbers. In 1996, the Republican team was in the majority and decided on a nuclear option to allow that reconciliation process to be used to increase deficits in the 10-year window. That was unfortunate, because it destroyed the agreement all 100 senators had agreed
Congress
to in
set to
1974.
vote on the big, beautiful bill,
But
guys.
now,
Continue
today,
to double tap that
If
screen.
we
Subscribe
proceed
if you're new.
with this current policy baseline, there's 2 other pillars that you're destroying of the architecture to create fiscal discipline. The second pillar was no deficits after the 10-year period. That's been destroyed. And the third was to use honest numbers from the Congressional Budget Office on a current law basis, comparing each provision in the bill as compared to the provision not being in the bill. So here we are, taking a step that is as significant as it was in 1996. All three pillars will be brought down, not by Democrats, but by Republicans. It's not necessary to do this to get what you want within the 10-year period. Why tear down these additional two pillars of honesty about the numbers, no more smoke and mirrors, and creating deficits after the 10-year period? It's extremely unfortunate if you press forward with that vision in this bill. President.
Dan say he a complete moron. He live in Oregon. Let's go, Dan.
I recognize the senator from Oregon.
I want to pick up on the point that my colleague from Washington State touched on. Everybody ought to understand this is the nuclear option. It's just hidden behind a whole lot of Washington, D.C. lingo. The only difference is instead of pressing a big nuclear button right at the beginning of the Congress, Republicans decided that they'd hide behind a cloak of Senate procedure and go nuclear for every individual bill they want to pass on party lines. And I just say to my colleagues, there's going to be a lot of horrendous messes to clean up after this legislation. But my colleagues need to understand the moves, as my colleague from Washington State has said, cut both ways. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
I recognize the Democrat leader.
I ask that debate time come off the bill unless otherwise advised.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Rhode Island.
In this place where big money now rules and in which fakery is now the order of the day and numbers no longer have to be real, there is one point that stands out, and that is that the fakery on the floor is belied by the language of the bill. He
called it the fakery.
If these assertions were true, they would not need to raise the debt limit. All of this fun and games, all of this parliamentary mischief that is happening right now crashes into the fact that in real markets, in the real world, outside of this fakery, the debt limit is actually a real thing. And I will take a moment to read from page 754 of this midnight monstrosity what it actually says.
Woo, monstrosity.
With the real
God.
world.
They call it the big, beautiful
Subtitle
bill of monstrosity.
C, increase in debt limit. Section 72001, modification of limitation on the public debt. Line 20. The limitation under Section 3101B of Title 31 United States Code, as most recently increased by Section 401B of Public Law 118.5, 31 U.S.C. 3101 Note, is increased by $5 trillion.
$5 trillion.
$5 trillion.
Continue to work on that like button, guys. Double tap
the real
screen
number
of your mobile
here.
device.
That's
Congress set to
where
vote
the rubber
on the big, beautiful
hits
bill.
the road in real life. The maneuver that is being pulled right now to avoid that fact, the fact that the debt limit has to be increased by $5 trillion so that Republicans can give immense tax breaks to billionaires, has not been used for this before. I used it once. In the year 2000, a deal had been struck on how to score activities of the Power Marketing Administration. Does anybody really know about the Power Marketing Administration? It's a small thing. Over the years, the Congressional Budget Office started scoring the program differently than the Senate had agreed to in 2000. So in 2023 and 2024, Senate Budget Chair, me, and the House Budget Chair, Jody Arrington, on a bipartisan basis, invoked this section
Joe
to have
says this guy's
CBO
capping.
return to the original Senate agreement and not the variation that they had created. This is what Section 312 has been used for, to resolve technical
What's up, Queen
ambiguity to advance a bipartisan appropriation deal, not to create Senate floor fakery belied by the $5 trillion debt limit hike that Republicans are obliged to pass to make good on this huge billionaire blowout that we're forcing through the Senate floor now. I yield the
Billionaire
floor.
blowout. That's what big billionaire blowout is what it means for the big beautiful bill. Says Congress,
I
guys.
recognize
They're
the senator
set to
from South
vote.
Carolina.
I am using and yielding time off the bill. Just wanna
Without
let-
objection?
Okay, thank you very, very much. So, the debate and eventual voting on the big, beautiful bill has begun. Hallelujah. It's taken a while for us to get here, but we're gonna have a debate worthy of a great country. We'll have what they think and what we think, and we're gonna vote on this bill in the coming days, and I'm excited about that. I've worked a long time with my colleagues to get to where we are today, so to the American people. The debate is beginning right now regarding the big, beautiful bill, and I'll tell you why that's good news for you, but let me take a little bit of time to talk about current policy versus current law. I know everybody's on the edge of their seat at home, but here's what I would tell you about numbers and budget chairmans. I'm not the first budget chairman. There have been those who came before me. In 2008, Chairman Kent Conrad, a really nice guy from
Let's get the
North
likes up,
Dakota,
guys. Double tap that
used a
screen.
new baseline.
We
in
need
the
100
budget
on the likes
so he could
ASAP.
get the farm bill in the budget. And Judd Gregg, really smart guy, former budget chairman, said the chairman of the budget committee declared the new baseline under a new budget. The budget chairman has a right to do that. That's what I'm doing. I'm setting the numbers. The parliamentarian said, that's my job as budget chairman. The resolution we're operating under to get us here, we voted to make that the case. So we're not doing anything sneaky. We actually voted to give me the authority to do this, and it passed. But again, I'm not the first chairman to change a baseline for different reasons. One, to get the farm bill in, and another occasion, Senator Sanders changed the baseline in 2022 when he was budget chairman under budget reconciliation to issue a budget rule allowing the numbers to change to get more money for Head Start. So Senator Sanders, as budget chairman, directed a new rule be written to get more money for Head Start. So don't tell me you've never done this before in terms of changing the baseline as budget chairman. The
Should
budget chairman
Congress
under
vote
312
in the big
sets
beautiful
the
bill?
baseline.
Make sure you vote.
This has
on
been
the poll
acknowledged
in
by
the chat,
Republicans
and
and
most definitely
Democrats.
double tap that
The
screen, guys.
baseline
Get
has
the
changed
likes
in the
up.
past based on the budget committee chairman's desire, one to get a farm bill in, and the other to change the numbers, a new rule to get Head Start spending. So this has been done before, but I'll be the first to say that what we're doing here is historic in a good way. In 2017, we passed the Trump tax cuts. They're due to expire in December. Why is that? Before I got here, current law was the way to score or implement tax policy. After 10 years, the tax cuts expired, current law. As budget chairman, I've decided to use current policy when it comes to cutting taxes. If you use current policy, they never expire. So the policies that were created in 2017 would not end in December, they would continue. And that's a good thing for the American people. That's a good thing for the economy because it gives you certainty. So I made a decision as budget chairman, working with my colleagues, to look at tax cuts, something important for the country, to give certainty to businesses and individuals, and make sure after 10 years they don't arbitrarily go away and have a cliff. So I made that decision, my colleagues backed me up, and that's in the budget resolution governing the debate that we're here today. So why do we want to make the tax cuts permanent? Because if they expire in December, the average family of 4 in South Carolina will have a $1,700 increase. I don't want that, and I bet you people at home don't want that. So we have to deal with that. That cliff is coming, and not only do I want to avoid that cliff, I don't want to put us in that position ever again. So the tax cuts have generated more revenue for the government than CBO estimated in 2017. The one thing about our friends at CBO, I appreciate all your hard work, you've worked really hard. When it comes to taxing, they always get it wrong about how much revenue to be collected. So when you look at the years that have passed since 2017, on the corporate side, on the individual side, the revenue to the government has actually grown because of those tax cuts, and that's a good thing. So cutting taxes means more money for you and your family. Our friends on the other side, if you're waiting on them to cut your taxes, you're going to die waiting. So they're never going to do it. Why are we doing it? Because they won't do it. We can never get 60 votes for this. So the bottom line is we're going to make these tax cuts permanent, and that's a good thing for businesses. Expensing will be allowed so you can invest and grow in your business. You can buy new equipment. You can write it off sooner, and that will get more activity in the economy. It's not me saying that. There's a track record, Mr. President. You've been in business. This stuff works. They don't like it, but it works. If you're in business and the tax code encourages you to invest in your business, you will. This stuff literally works. And they hate it because it's money that could have gone to the government went back into the economy. What they don't realize, actually, the government gets more money. They just keep spending it. And we could do better on the spending side. And we are going to do better on the spending side. So this bill makes the 2017 tax cuts permanent. It avoids a tax increase for your family that's coming in December if we don't act now. It secures the border. One of the reasons there are more of us than our Democratic friends is how you screwed the country up for the last 4 years. We went from secure borders to completely open borders, absolute chaos, and that's why we're winning and you're losing. And you want to take us back to open borders. We're not going back to your policies that allowed 8.3 million encounters at the border, 1.7 million gotaways, chaos to cities and communities. We're not going back to the policies that led to Laken Riley's murder in Georgia, where the man convicted for murdering her was captured several times, released because there was no detention space to hold him in Texas, and he left a free man, went to Georgia and killed this lady. That's happened too many times, and it's going to stop. Now, what are we doing to secure the border? We went from lawless borders to the most secure borders in 6 months because of President Trump. President Trump, you should be exceedingly proud. Holman, the whole team, you've locked that border down, but we want to do it in a way that it'll stay locked down for the president after you and beyond. So how do we secure the gains made by President Trump and his team? We're going to, in this bill, hire more ICE agents to expedite removal of people that shouldn't be here, particularly criminal elements, people that are dangerous. We're going to finish the wall. Not one Democrat, maybe one, no way would get 60 votes to hire more ICE agents.
Should they pass that bill, let me know by voting on the poll in the chat, guys.
Wall. And we're going to go from 40,000 detention beds to 125,000. This secure the border is about $175 billion. New technology along the border, fiber cable, so we don't go back to the days of open borders. This is in the bill. To those of you who voted for us and President Trump to secure the border, we're delivering through this bill. And they would never do what we're doing. I'll be the first to admit, when it comes to securing the border, they're never going to do what we're doing. We're hiring more ICE agents, we're finishing the wall, and we're increasing more detention beds so we don't let people out that can go and murder. I'm very proud of this. I wrote this part. This is money well spent. This will secure that border in perpetuity. President Trump, this is your plan. It is in our bill. Well done. To my friends on the other side, you had your chance and you screwed it up big time. And that's why we're in charge. Revitalize our military. The world is a dangerous place. We have $150 billion in this bill to help build out the Golden Dome, to help
They're
improve
really
the
gonna
quality
build
of
a
life of men
Golden
and women serving
Dome,
the
guys,
military
over
by improving
America.
the barracks and housing. They need the money, more weapons. It's in this bill, and we didn't have to get extorted to buy a bunch of butter to get $150 billion. We reduce government spending over a decade by $1.6 trillion. We're running deficits, national debt of 37 trillion. So what have we done here? In the last 5 years, from 2020
We
basically.
need more likes,
to
guys.
now,
Double tap that screen. Get
Medicaid
the
has
likes up.
grown
We should
by
have 1,000 likes
50%.
by now. Double tap the
what's
screen on your
happened
mobile device or click those
is
three
that
dots, hit that thumbs up.
Medicaid was
They're talking
originally
about the
intended
big, beautiful bill.
for children and poor families, children and people who were disabled and couldn't work to provide health care. Count me in for that, makes a lot of sense. Along comes President Obama. He expands Medicaid to include able-bodied adults for the first time. And what he did was he incentivized states to include these people in Medicaid. For every new able-bodied adult, you get 90% of the cost from the federal government, 10% from the states, and Medicaid has grown 50%, is going to take over Medicare because of what President Obama did. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to deal with that in a responsible way. What about this idea? If you're not a child, if you're not disabled, you're able-bodied, and you don't have any children under 14, we're going to have a 20-hour-a-week work requirement for you to stay on Medicaid. That's a good thing.
Wow.
It's a good thing for the individual involved to be working. It's a good thing for the taxpayer for them to be working. But that seems to be a crime on the other side, to ask somebody to work that can work. How many people out there listening to this, I don't know how many you are, but are you working every day? Are you going to work with kids? A lot of people do that, by the way. So one of the reforms in this bill is to introduce a work requirement to the additional population that President Obama put on Medicaid that was never intended on the original purpose of Medicaid. This work requirement is going to save a bunch of money. Finally, we're addressing the biggest scam I've seen in a very long time. Somewhere along the line, somebody figured out that at the state level, that if you tax doctors and hospitals and medical providers on the funds they get and take that revenue, you can actually get more Medicaid
If we can't get the likes
money.
up on our own, guys,
This
I
is a
would be
money
shutting the
laundering
chat down.
scheme.
And a lot of y'all
It
who are
needs
not
to come
subscribed
to
will
an
have to subscribe
end
for
as
5
we know
minutes
it.
in order to be able to
States have
type in the chat if we
gone
can't
up
get
to
the likes
6%
up,
of the
guys.
provider
Double
tax.
tap that
They
screen
take that
or
tax
click the
revenue
3 dots, hit the
and
thumbs
they
up.
use it to
Hit the
get
like
more
button,
money
it
from the
helps the
federal
channel.
government. The hospitals and doctors don't lose, they get the money back. The state doesn't lose, they get more money. The only group that loses is the federal government, and we're deep, deep in debt. So we're going to reform the provider tax system that I think is abusive, very abusive. As to Medicaid, it's on a growth trajectory that will overtake Medicare. Now is the time to put common sense reform in place, not only to slow the growth, and we're not talking about cutting Medicaid, we're slowing the growth, but try to create some sense of fiscal responsibility.
We most definitely
So,
exercise
to
the Copyright Act of 1976
our chairman
on
of
all
the
videos
Finance
played.
Committee.
This is for educational purposes.
You have
They are
constructed
preparing to
a
vote on the
package
big,
better
beautiful
than
bill, guys.
2017. You have included some growth elements in the package that will allow the economy to grow because it will be in businesses' interest to invest. And I want to applaud you for this growth package. Now, what does this all mean? Current policy, current law. If you do what I have decided to do, make the tax cuts permanent, and you implement these reforms to Medicaid and other areas,
$507
you
billion
will, over the next
deficit
10
reduction.
years, reduce the deficit by $507 billion. That's CBO, not me. Now, how do you do that? You grow the economy and you begin to control spending in a common sense way. Most people can relate to that because they do it all the time. People at home sometimes have to work extra to meet the needs of their family, and they have to tighten their belt. So what have we achieved here in the one big beautiful bill? We're going to make your border as secure as it possibly can be and never go back to open borders. We're going to put in place border security measures that keep it secure. We're going to make the tax cuts permanent so your taxes do not go up in December of this year, and we're going to add additional pro-growth policies to help our economy. We're going to reform Medicaid in a way that makes sense, deal with the waste, fraud, and abuse of that program so that there's more money for the disabled and children, because the more money you give the able-bodied who can work, it's less money for children and people on disability. And one of the most perverse things
Do
about
y'all
what
agree with what he's
President
saying?
Obama
Let me
did
know in the chat.
is that the reimbursement rates to states are higher for able-bodied adults than they are for disabled people and children. 90%. So President Obama created a system to entice states, lure them in to add people to Medicaid that are not disabled, not poor children, because his goal was to put everybody in the country under government-run health care, and the government reimbursement
Marcio
is
say
higher
this guy lacks
for an
backbone.
able-bodied
Okay.
person than it is
Continue
for
to double
a poor
tap that
child
screen, guys.
or disabled person.
Get the
And
likes
we're going to
up.
stop that.
Shut her live.
Because that's not fair. It's not fair to the taxpayer, and it's not fair to the population that we're trying to help. So we're going to control spending in a common sense way. We're going to revitalize our military at a time of great need. We're going to secure the border, and we're going to make the tax cuts that expire in December permanent so we don't have to deal with this every 10 years.
Wow.
It's a big, beautiful bill if you believe in cutting people's taxes, securing the border.
They say it's only for
strong
rich
military,
people, though.
and
What about the
controlling
poor
government
and middle
spending.
class people?
It is a
It's
nightmare.
only good if you rich. That's what
this
they say,
bill,
allegedly. What y'all
for
think about
those
that?
who want to raise taxes, who want open borders, who want a weak military, and never want to control one dime of federal spending. This bill is your nightmare if you're for open borders.
The Democrats
This bill
is
is your
they.
nightmare.
The Democrats say
If you
that
want
it
the
doesn't
government to
help
grow
out
without
actual
any
working class
limitation.
people. It's only
This
for the
bill
rich
is your
people.
nightmare
Is
if
what
you want
they
a weak
are.
military.
When I say they,
because
that's who
it's
they
gonna
talking
give
about.
us a
That's
stronger
who I'm talking
military.
about when I say
So
they.
why do we have this debate? That's what they, through years
See, he said
of
they
effort,
too.
have done.
He talking about the
The
Democrats,
military
just
is
like me.
always the last thing that gets funded when they're in charge. When they're in charge, you have no border. Completely broken, millions of people running through our country lawless. When they're in charge, there is no limit to growing the government. They entice everybody to grow the government. And when they're in charge, they're never going to cut your taxes in any meaningful way. The tax rate.
Do y'all think he's talking to the rich people when he say they're never going to cut your taxes?
If these tax
Continue
cuts
to get
expire,
those likes up. Can we get 300 on the like?
if you're a
Double
family
tap
full,
that
go up by
screen and click
$1,700.
those 3 dots. Hit
and we'll
that
go back
thumbs
to
up.
the 39.6 rate. Here's a question for the country. How much should the federal government take of anybody's income? What's a fair share? 37% seems pretty damn fair to me. Over a third of what you make, and that doesn't count state and local taxes.
Okay.
The number they would pick is probably a 90. So is 37% fair? I think yes. Most Americans think 25% is fair. You know, Jesus wants 10%. There is no number they won't embrace. So somewhere between 90 and 10, 37 is fair. This is not rewarding the wealthy, it's creating a number that makes sense. 37%
What's up,
going
Vic?
to the federal government is a fair share. It's over a third of what you make. And that doesn't count state and local taxes. This has been long, it's been hard, but we're about done. In a couple of days, we're going to pass the one big beautiful
We
bill.
need 50 more likes,
President
guys.
Trump's going to sign
50
it.
more people click those
Mike
3 dots, hit
Crapo and
that
his
thumbs
staff
up. It helps out the
deserve at
channel.
least one
Let's get
day
the
off.
likes to 300, guys.
I cannot thank you enough for what you and your team have done. To my budgeteers, you have been terrific. You have worked really hard. To CBO and Joint Tax and all these people, hats off to your efforts to get us
Shout
a
out to
quality
Rhonda for
product.
becoming a member.
To all of my
Thank
colleagues
you.
who've rowed the boat with us, we're about to reach the shore. And
Remember
when
to
this
subscribe
boat
to the
comes
channel if you're
ashore,
new, guys.
every family in America could have a sigh of relief. Your taxes will not go up this December. You'll get a Christmas present of not having a tax increase. To those who've been yearning for a secure border, it will be secure. To those men and women in uniform, you're going to get some help and you desperately need it. And to those who think we should do something about the government's growth in a common sense way, we've achieved that. I am very proud of this bill. I'm very proud of President Trump. I'm very proud of the Republican team that has gotten us to this point. And to my Democratic colleagues, we'll work together.
We got
where
over
we can.
1,400 votes,
But
guys, and
nobody
only got
over here
285
ever
likes.
expects you to do
Continue to
anything
get those likes up so I
about
can
the
stop
border,
saying it.
'cause you
Click the
proved
3
you
dots,
can.
hit the thumbs up.
Nobody over
It
here
helps out
believes
the
you're
channel.
ever going to reduce the size of government because you don't want to. So the bottom line is we're about to make history, Mr. President. This is your first term. I don't know what comes later for you. Hope you're here a long time. If that's what you want to be, you're a great senator. You're a good businessman. You've made a real success story. Family from Colombia. You've created a lot of job opportunity. I doubt if you'll ever do anything more important than this. Senator Crapo, you've been here a while. You're one of the smartest guys I ever met. Everything you've done all your life has led to this moment. This is what you were built to do. This is what you were meant to do. You're the right man at the right time to do what this country desperately needs to stay on track to be safe and prosperous. To all my colleagues who are going to vote for this bill, you should be proud and you should talk about it because it's going to make us all safer and it's going to make us all more prosperous. Me being budget chairman is a quirk in the history of the Senate. This is not my thing normally. but I have really gotten into it. And I've learned a lot thanks to my colleagues, and I'm proud to have the honor of being budget chairman at a time I think it matters the most. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the following staff members from my staff and from Senator Merkley's
Not on my
staff
watch
be given
say this is sad.
all access floor passes for the consideration of the bill. Caitlin Wilson, Lillian Meadows, Scott Graber, Walker Trillock, Taylor Reedy, Democratic staff Mike Jones,
Reddick
Melissa
says she
Pittsburgh,
don't care for this
Josh
man.
Smith, and Tyler.
This guy has the taste
Edisler,
for
Tyler,
orange flavor.
EVILSIZER.
Let's go. Continue
ask
to
that
double tap that
unanimous
screen,
consent.
man.
Without objection.
With that, I will yield to my good friend from Idaho. Huh? Oh, wait a minute.
Nope.
That the use of calculators, whatever they are, be permitted on the floor of the Senate during consideration of the bill.
Without objection.
They're finna use calculators to make sure that the votes are right.
I recognize the senator from Idaho.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, let me thank my colleague from South Carolina, Senator Graham, for his very kind words. I return the same kind of compliments to him for his great work in helping to build this bill.
45 million for Trump golf season.
I'm going to make just a few remarks right now in response to
Y'all
some
should
of the
consider
allegations
getting
and
memberships to the channel,
mischaracterizations
guys.
that my colleagues on the other side have made
We
about
do
how
have
this bill has been
memberships.
structured in terms of its evaluation and scoring. And then later, I'm going
Become
to
a
come
member
and give
today.
a much longer speech, sorry, sir, on the bill itself. But the things that were said this morning just have to be responded to. First of all, it is said that the reason that we are going to increase the debt ceiling in the bill is because we are spending so much money and driving the deficit up. Well, first of all, our bill drives the deficit down, not up. And secondly, the reason we are dealing with the debt ceiling in the bill is because under the previous administration's operations, the debt ceiling has already been breached. It was breached on January 2nd. And we are
What
limping
about
along
January
with,
6th?
extraordinary measures is what we call them here in Washington to try to keep the government funded until Congress can extend the debt ceiling. This has nothing to do with President Trump. It happened before he even was sworn into office. It has nothing to do with this bill. It has to do with the profligate spending that drove us into a breach of the debt ceiling on January 2. Secondly, my
Continue
colleagues
to
on
work
the
on
other
that
side
like
tried to
button, guys.
characterize
Click
our
those
choice
three dots,
of
hit
the
that
current
thumbs up.
policy
It helps out the
baseline
channel.
as a gimmick.
Congress to
And said
vote
it's
on
never
the
been done
big,
before.
beautiful bill.
Well, they should have been more careful in their words because the current policy baseline is currently utilized in the current CBO baseline for many spending programs. In fact, many spending programs, about $2.5 trillion of spending programs are measured under the current treatment, which the Democrats have been using for decades, to make it so they don't have to count spending increases as an increase in the
Paisley
deficit.
Martin says these people are going to
They
hell
are
with
correct
gasoline
that
draws
that
on.
policy
Wow.
has never been
Okay,
applied to
let's go.
taxes before, because it was not intended to apply to taxes. That ruling and that system that was set up was intentionally designed to favor tax increases over spending cuts and to force Congress to increase taxes and increase spending. It was a strategy to achieve what we all know of as tax and spend. And no matter how
What's up,
they try
Ms.
to
D?
cover it over today in their debate, it comes down to this. They are furious that we refuse to raise taxes in America by $4.3 trillion on Americans. And they claim that our refusal to raise your taxes, America, is going to run up the deficit because they can't get $4 trillion more of your tax revenue into their pockets. Well, the first failure of that rationale is, if you believe that you give them $4.5 trillion by letting them raise your
CJ
taxes
say y'all
again,
already raising taxes.
if you believe they're going to use that to pay the debt down, let me
Dobie
tell you,
says tax the rich.
there's not a tax increase that I've seen in this Congress in my lifetime. that was used to pay
James
the debt
says
debt.
vote yes
It was used
on the
to
big
increase
beautiful
spending.
bill. He's with
It's
it.
called tax and spend. And it's that bias in our scoring system that we are
What's up,
fixing
Sierra?
today.
Adding $4
We are
trillion to the
fixing
debt,
it so
causing
that
it to help the
current
rich. Okay.
policy is how you treat taxes, just like you treat $2.5 trillion of spending this year in your scoring system. We're evening
said, somebody
the
said
balance
vote
board
no.
between taxing
Let's go.
and spending. And America should sigh a sigh of relief that finally we are fixing our scoring procedures so that we don't have a built-in drive to increase taxes. Let's put it another way. One of my colleagues said, just even children can understand
Let
the
me
difference
continue
between
to let
$1
me
trillion
know what
and
you
$0.
think about this bill in the chat,
I think they can
guys.
also understand
Also, subscribe to the
that if
channel
you
if you're
don't
new.
raise
And most
taxes,
definitely click those 3 dots, hit
you're
that
not
thumbs up.
changing the tax
That's how
code.
you hit the like
You're
button for the
making it
content.
bring in the same
It would be
revenue that
greatly
it brought in
appreciated.
before. You're not increasing the deficit. You're protecting their wallets. And the bottom line here is very simple. I think every American, at least 90% of them, intuitively understand that the refusal to let your taxes go up by $4 trillion is not a deficit increase. You are not the responsible. Us keeping your money in your pocket is not making you responsible for increasing the deficit. Deficit increases come when Congress keeps spending your money. And never,
King
ever
says
controlling
already
its
messing
spending.
our
The
country up
problem
now.
is not
They
a
are
lack
coming
of
for our
revenue.
money, guys.
It is too much spending. So let's make it clear. This is not a gimmick. The gimmick is the one that's been used for all these years. We are making a balance between the treatment of tax and spend so that those taxpayers in America
Deborah
have at
says
least a
smoke and
fair
mirrors.
chance against the rules of this chamber. Now, one other thing that I think needs to be made here is there was a lot of talk on the other side, and then I'll stop and bring my longer speech later. One other point that needs to be made here is it was suggested that this has never been done before, even on taxes. Well, there's a president named President Obama who faced a similar situation like we face today. Only then, he was president
Fair taxes,
when a
tax the
huge
rich,
tax
they
cut
say.
that President Bush had accomplished was expiring. And all of those tax cuts that President Bush had been able to achieve were going to go away, and everybody's taxes were going to go up. And President Obama said, no, I'm not going to let that happen. So he put a bill out on the floor to stop those tax increases from happening. And he was attacked, actually, for increasing the deficit by not letting taxes go up. And President Obama, through his OMB deputy director, said that keeping tax policy current should be scored under a current policy. And that if his act in letting those tax increases be kept in place should be scored as current policy, not as a tax increase. So you've got one of your own presidents from the Democratic Party saying that letting existing tax law stay in place and protecting against huge tax increases on the American people is the appropriate approach to take. That current policy, and those are their words, current policy is the way we should treat tax policy. So I say to everybody in America who's been hearing all of the politics of fear about what we're doing here, running up the deficit, need to remember that only in Washington, D.C. is the refusal to raise your taxes an increase in the deficit. And we're not going to let that happen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Yeah, so they are most definitely preparing to vote on the big, beautiful bill, guys. It's crazy. I can't hear
If
nothing.
no one
There
yields
you go.
time,
Now you
time
turned
will
it
be
on.
charged equally to both sides.
Continue to double tap that screen, guys. I got a little bit from Trump. where he most definitely spoke on this big, beautiful bill and what he thinks about it and the work that was put in to passing the big, beautiful bill. Creating the big, beautiful bill, I mean. So I guess while they take a break and basically get their things together that they have to present, we'll go hear a little bit from President Trump on what he had to say about the big, beautiful bill. This is Congress preparing to vote on the big, beautiful bill, guys. Hold on real quick while I pull Trump up. Continue to work on that like button, man. We ain't went nowhere. We're just waiting on them to get their stuff together, and while they do that, we got Trump.
Beautiful, right? Beautiful. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here to support one of the most important pieces of legislation in the history of our country. And that's everybody saying that, virtually everybody. The one big, beautiful bill to secure our borders, turbocharge our economy, and bring back the American dream. That's what's happening too.
Can we get 40 more? We'll be at 400 on the like.
Approval and reception. And when we were thinking about doing it, we were going to break it down into 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 bills. And I said, let's make it one big, beautiful bill, my friend. They actually said it would be very much harder to get this way, but it would be better. And the truth is, I think it worked out well because there's something for everybody. And I think in many ways, much better. We're delighted to be joined by Secretaries Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, Pete Hegseth, Doug Burgum, Doug Collins, Sean Duffy, Howard Lutnick, Linda McMahon,
what's up, Miss Fat?
Brooke Rollins, Scott Turner, Chris Wright. Wow, that's a hell of a group.
Trump
I think that's the biggest.
Hair static today.
That's the biggest group of cabinet members. That's the biggest group of cabinet, and we're not finished yet because we have our great Attorney General Pam Bondi here, U.S. Trade Representative, and he's working around 24 hours. We have one after another. Countries come. Everybody wants to be with us because we have the hottest country in the world. A year ago, we had a disaster on our hand. We had the coldest country, I think, by far. And now we have the hottest, the King of Saudi Arabia. When I was there, we brought back $5.1 trillion between Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE.
Is getting ready to vote.
All three said, great leaders, they all said to me the same thing. You know, it's amazing. In 4 months at that time, now it's getting to be close to 6. But in 4 months, they said, you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's not even close. And they thought we were dead a year before that. They said, I thought you were dead. The country was dead. And it was pretty close to it. But we have the hottest country in the world, so it's great. And Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is very busy because, where are you, Jamieson? Everybody wants to make a deal and have a part of it, right? I know you and Howard and Scott are working overtime, making deals with other countries. Remember a few months ago, the press was saying...
We need 30 more likes, guys. Continue to double tap that screen if you have
We just signed with China yesterday, right? Just signed with China. We have everybody. We're not going to make deals with everybody. Some we're just going to send them a letter, say, thank you very much. You're going to pay 25, 35, 45%. That's the easy way to do it. And my people don't want to do it that way. They want to do some of it, but they want to make more deals than I would do. But we're having some great deals. We have one coming up, maybe with India, very big one, where we're going to open up India. In the China deal, we're starting to open up China, things that never really could have happened. And the relationship with every country has been very good. And we also have OMB Director, who's very busy also. Russ Vogt, thank you. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you to everybody that's hitting that like button. Continue to double tap that screen.
And also, I want to give a very special thank you.
Subscribe if you are new.
Group we have here. This is amazing. The quality of people, but actually, I like these people and most of those people much better than the people I just named, okay? But a very special thanks as well to Speaker Mike Johnson, who's a great, legendary guy. He's going to go down as a legend. A great friend of mine, a fantastic Senator Roger Marshall, wherever you may be. Roger, thank you very much. Thank you. Bernie Marino, great win Bernie had in Ohio. Bernie, great win. That was a tough race. They said that was not winnable, and he won by about 5 points, so that's pretty good. So much for not winnable. Mike Lee is here. Mike, hi, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Tim Sheehy, another tremendous win. Way to go, Tim. Young, handsome. That was another race that wasn't supposed to be able to be won. They said, well, we have a very young, handsome guy. I said, does that matter? Looks don't matter, do they, Mike?
14 trillion in investments.
Anyway, great.
That's what they said.
Great job. You can't help it. You can't help it. Great. That was a great race, along with Representatives Paul Gosar, Greg Murphy, Tom Kaine, Jen Kiggins, Rob Bresnahan, who's where is Rob? Stand up, Rob. Let me see you. Good. He's done a fantastic job. And Ryan McKenzie. Thank you, Ryan.
What's up,
Thank you all.
Linus and Sweden? What's up? What's up?
A big group of people. We're here this afternoon to share the stories of an incredible group of patriots from across the nation whose future we are defending with the one big, beautiful bill. This is the ultimate codification of our agenda to, very simply, a phrase that's been used pretty well by me over the last 10 years, but maybe even before that, make America great again. Very simple, make America great again. When Joe Biden used to get up and say, we will stop this horrible MAGA. We're going to stop MAGA. We're going to fight it. I said, Joe, loosen up. It's called Make America Great Again. It's okay. Remember that he got up so angry. He was so angry. He said, make America great again.
Jim says
we'll
the big,
deliver
beautiful
a record
MAGA
tax
bill.
cut,
Let's
a
go.
record spending cut, a record investment in border security. We've done so well on the border. You know, last month we had 0 people that crossed the border. 0.
0 people cross the border. Do y'all believe that?
So Christie and Tom Homan and some of the people, what a job you've done. But you know, people forget about that. They don't care. The border's been fixed. I wanted to talk about the border 2 days ago.
0 people crossing the border. I don't believe it.
Why? It's fixed. You know, it's the second time it happened to me. In 2016, I won on the border. I fixed it in about 3 months. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I don't
And they
believe
wouldn't let me
it
talk about
positive
the border.
vibes.
Sir, nobody wants to hear about the border. But we're going to talk about it anyway, right, Tom Ullman? We're talking about it anyway. So we have a big number of dollars that's coming here because we want to keep it that way and we want to keep it fixed. And a record number of deportations. We're bringing criminals out by the thousands. Nobody can even imagine. They let people in that were murderers. 11,888 murderers.
No.
People from mental institutions.
No. I don't believe that everybody that they let in was the M word. Not no 8,066. No, come on, man. Now, it may have been that many illegals that came in, but everybody wasn't the M word. What we doing?
And insane asylum, you know what that is? That's insane asylum. That's a mental institution on steroids. And during the campaign, I talk about the late, great Hannibal Lecter. Do you know who that is? Hannibal Lecter? Silence of the Lambs. I'd talk about it and the fake news would go crazy. Why does he keep mentioning? Well, because we won in a landslide. That's why they don't want to have Hannibal
That was cap.
in our midst. And the day I signed this bill into law, almost every major promise made in the 2024 campaign already will have become a promise kept. And that's very important. Promises made, promises kept.
Absolutely.
And according to the Council of Economic Advisors, these reforms will protect or create more than 7 million jobs, add 3.1% to economic growth, reduce taxes for the typical American by nearly 15%, and increase take-home pay for the normal family of 4 by at least $13,000. And that takes place immediately. That's not bad, right? Look, I'm looking at that guy back there, right? That's pretty good. And if we had a person over at the Fed that would lower interest rates a little bit, that would be helpful too. It's hard to believe. This is on top of, we have to fight this guy. He's not doing the job. Each point that he keeps it up is the equivalent of $300 billion. $300 billion. So if he lowered it to, it would save $600 billion We have to work hard with cuts on that, right? That's a lot of cutting. And this guy could do it so easily. We don't have inflation. Well, we might have inflation. Yeah, and if you do, you raise the rate a little bit. That's okay. But we're going out because Biden gave us a lot of short-term debt. And given the short-term debt, he did us no favor. So I think what we'll do is we'll probably just extend the short-term debt and then go out, because I don't want to tie it up for 10 or 15 years at a high rate. But every point is it's really more, is 300 billion. So if we got it down to 1%, we're talking about almost $1 trillion in saving just with the stroke of a pen. No work, no missing anything, just like an accounting situation. Oh, Doug Collins, I just see Doug. Did
Somebody
I mention you,
said
Doug? I don't think so. I'm glad I saw you.
impeach him, period.
I'm glad that somebody's going to be in big trouble with you. They didn't write your name down, Doug. Somebody's in, I got you. So we think of that, though. We save, and all you have to do, it's so simple. I'm explaining to this guy, and Biden extended him. That wasn't good. I'm explaining to him, you can do so much for our country. You could save $1 trillion just with a stroke of a pen. Just the utterance of a sentence that we're going to be cutting. It's a shame. It's a shame. We're one of the highest. We should be the lowest. You know, with the United States of America, we'd have money coming in like at levels that they have never seen. I got a call the other day from the people in Congress because we're doing our bill. I didn't even tell you this, Mike, and they called. They said, there's something wrong with the numbers, sir. I said, what's wrong? I don't know. They're not balancing out. There's something really wrong. I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, we don't know. I said, what's the problem? We're taking in much more money than we have scheduled.
Can we get the likes to 500,
I said,
guys?
so far, that
Click
sounds
the
good.
three dots, hit that thumbs up.
They said, how much is it? About $80 billion. I said, do me a favor, check the tariff line. They called me back an hour later. Sir, we've taken in $88 billion in tariffs. Isn't that a beautiful thing? $88 billion.
So he said we made $88 billion in tariffs. Trump say he's
Go
doing the
off script
thing.
and tell these little stories, Scott, right? Because it does make it a little more interesting. Although my speechwriters have just gotten every award in the book. Vince, where are you, Vince? Where are we? Where's Ross? He's gotten all these awards and I'm going off the record all the time. Where is he? He didn't show up to the speech. He wrote the speech. He didn't show. Well, that means he has confidence in me. According to the Council of Economic Advisors, these reforms will protect or create more than 7 million jobs, add 3.1% to economic growth, reduce taxes for the typical American.
Now, Trump said it'll create jobs. Some of the Democrats said it'll take away jobs. Just like he said we earned like, what'd he say, 88 trillion in tariffs, you know, whatever money. But they saying that we're going to lose money voting in this bill. What do y'all think about it? Let me know in the comments, as well as voting on that poll in the chat. Most definitely click those three dots, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you are new.
By nearly 15%, and increase take-home pay for a normal family by an incredible $13,000. All of these things are happening. And by the way, there's no inflation. All of the numbers I gave you, all of the money that's coming in, and maybe more importantly than the billions of dollars we're taking in with tariffs, is the fact that we've got hundreds of plants going up all over the United States that never would have been here. I was with Howard and Scott and Texas Instruments the other day, and the head of Texas Instruments, they're going to spend $60 billion in the United States. And he said, sir, away. But bigger is the fact that they're all coming in, they're building their factories, the AI factories and the auto plants. We have auto plants, they're closing up in other countries. I don't want to specifically name the countries, but you know who they are. And they're coming into the U.S. and they're opening up and building like nobody's ever seen anything like it. I don't call it a miracle, I call it, if this should have been done 40 years ago, we would have never lost we lost 50% of our auto industry to China, Mexico, Canada, and various other countries. Should have never happened if you had a president that said, we're going to charge you tariffs, you're not going to build next to us, send it in and take away our jobs. If you would have said 25, 50, or 100% tariff, not one company would have left. But they weren't business people. They were politicians, not very good ones and some good ones, but some really not good at anything, to be honest with you. We're going to stop the largest tax hike, and we're going to do that in history. This would be, if the bill doesn't pass, there'll be a 68% tax increase. Think of that, 68%, which would be the largest in history by about 40 points. And we'll make the Trump tax cuts permanent, expand the child tax credit, and we will deliver no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. Among the countless citizens who will benefit from these tax cuts is Malachi Krzyzewski, a devoted mom and DoorDash driver from Ripon, Wisconsin, who uses her tip income to support her son. Think of that, no tax on tips. And it was a very big problem. I was at a dinner in my beautiful building in Las Vegas, and unrelated to this,
We
and I
need
said,
50 more
what's
lights,
going
guys,
on?
to be at 100. Double tap that
I will never
screen.
say good-looking waitress, because looks don't matter anymore, you know, in our modern society. She happened to be beautiful, but I won't say that. I won't mention that. But nevertheless, a waitress came over, and I said, how are you doing? She said, not good, sir. Why? The government is killing me on tips. And she looked at me, she said, sir, there should be no tax on tips. I said, say it again. There should be no tax on tips. I said, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. I walked outside, the press was there, as always, waiting for something bad to happen, hundreds of them. I said, ladies and gentlemen, please announce tonight there will be no tax on tips. And a legend was made. We won Nevada by so much. Republicans don't win Nevada, we won Nevada. So I want to thank that young, beautiful waitress. Thank you very much. But with no tax on tips and other cuts, this bill will save Malachi thousands of dollars per year, enabling her to achieve her goal of visiting every U.S. state with her son. She wants to visit every state by the time he's 18 years old. So, Malachi, it sounds to me like you're off to a fantastic start. And where are you, Malachi? Where are you? Congratulations. Great. That's good. Thank you. Also with us today is Luke Wilson, a 23-year-old electrical lineman. He loves being an electrician, but in this case, the lineman. And these are guys that take big risk, and it's hard stuff. But if you know what you're doing, it's fine.
Rhonda says, what a
He's from Harmony,
$5,000
Pennsylvania,
check
as well as Dee Sova, a truck driver from Springfield, Missouri, where, by the way, our beautiful planes landed, our B-2s. They landed after 36 hours of flying. Great going, Pete. And they hit the target. And they hit the target, and the target has now been proven to be obliterated, just as we said. We had little fake news from CNN. Thank you very much, CNN, for that. With 3 million miles of driving under her belt, who mentors other women in her industry. And I just want to say, Luke and Dee spend countless hours working overtime to help make this country run. And this bill, the typical overtime worker like them will take home nearly $1,500 extra every single year. So you're talking about at least $1,500, and there will be no harassment because you were being harassed by the Democrats. So Luke and Dee, congratulations to you both. Thank you very much. Congratulations, wherever you may be. Thank you. Thank you very much. Also with us is James Benson, a third-generation auto worker from Belleville, Michigan, who has spent 26 years at Ford Motor Company, which is doing very well. They have a lot of plants in this country. If you have plants in this country, you're going to make a lot of money. And is a member of a tremendous group of people, auto workers. And I'll tell you, we love these people. Auto workers for Trump. And I came through for them, but they were with me long before I really thought. A lot of people said, is he going to run again? Will he run? They've always been with me, the auto workers. James was a lifelong Democrat until 2017, when he saw the benefits of our tax law, and he also liked Trump. Now, sometimes they can like the law, but if they don't like the candidate, it's not going to matter, right? Is that right, Marco? Marco knows, because he has been one hell of a great Secretary of State, right? Stand up, Marco. Everybody respects Marco, right? True. Everybody respects him. Now we're delivering an even bigger win for the auto workers by making interest on car payments fully tax deductible. You know, that's something only rich people seem to have gotten. I said, you know, and that was my idea. It's pretty simple. But I said, you know, the rich people, they always looking for deductions. We want deductions. Linda, did I say, will you please stand up? Linda McMahon. So great. How much is Harvard going to be charged? How much are you asking for Harvard? Because they really have violated a lot of different caveats, haven't they? Huh? A lot, like a lot. They've been given $5 billion over the years. Can you imagine? And that's over a short number of years. That's just the beginning. They have $52 billion sitting in the bank, and they haven't been nice to our country. So I want to thank Linda McMahon, who's been really fantastic. But I said, on interest, I said, why couldn't we, if a car is made in the United States only, because otherwise we don't care if it's made someplace else, give the people to buy the car a deduction on the interest that they're paying to buy the car. And people said, what a great idea. It's so simple. It's like the paperclip. Somebody came up with the idea of a paperclip many years ago, 1817. And he became a very rich person.
We need 14 more likes, guys. 14 more likes.
But it's like the paperclip, but only if the car is made in America. Remember that, James. We're going to keep those Michigan auto factories roaring. And as you know, we won Michigan by a lot, Susie, right? We won Michigan by a big margin, and something that typically is not easy, but I think we've won it. I actually think we've won it 3 times in a row. So it's been a great state, but a big factor with the auto workers. They went with us very big, and I love them. The One Big Beautiful Bill will also be an incredible victory for American farmers, another group that we did great with, especially family farmers like James Cullifer of Virginia Beach. Our bill will provide 100% expensing so they can buy a new farm equipment. And by the way, the expensing is good for everybody, not just farmers. And it'll virtually eliminate the so-called estate tax or the death tax. So you have a farm, you leave it to your children. If you like the children, you leave it. If you don't worry about the details. No, some people don't want to leave them. They don't like their kids, you know? Anybody in here not liking their children, farmers? But if you like your kids, you want to leave it. And a lot of times what was happening before I got there, because I put this in the first tax bill, as you know, but people would die, they'd leave their farm. There was no cash, but there was value to the farm, sometimes good value. It's called real estate rich and cash poor. And the kids had no money, and they'd be foreclosed out by a bank. They'd borrow money to pay the estate tax. You don't have to pay estate tax anymore. That's pretty big stuff. So for the farmers and for others in small business, it's great. But James's family has been working the land for generations, and with this bill, we will ensure that family farms like his can stay in the family for many generations to come. Where's James? James, where's James?
This is President Trump speaking on the big, beautiful bill, guys.
That's great. And you know what I mean, James, right? People pass away, they love their kids or whoever they're leaving, but they love their kids especially. And you won't have the family farmer anymore the long time because they were losing them to the banks, and they were losing them at record numbers. It's not going to happen anymore. There's no tax. We're also going to empower American parents by expanding opportunity scholarships to provide school choice.
To the person that says shish because President Trump is talking, he is the president. He ain't my king, that's your king.
School choice is a big deal. And we just got school working with the governor of Texas, as you know, Greg Abbott. We just had it passed in Texas, and I know about that. Somebody said, yeah, that was a big deal. They've been trying to get it for 9 years, and they asked me if I'd call the legislature, Republicans in the legislature, and I did. And I gave them a pep talk, and everybody voted for it. First time, they were shocked, but they never asked me to call them before. This was the first time, and they got it passed, right, Susie? It was amazing. And it was something that Dan and Greg and everybody, they really wanted it. And Ted Cruz wanted it badly. They all wanted it, so we got it in Texas. But you're going to have it. More and more people are talking about school choice. Good thing. This will be the godsend for mothers like Angelina Banks from Philadelphia. Where's Angelina? Where is Angelina? Oh. Oh. Oh, you are very pretty. She went out for a second and she's coming back. Okay? Where's Ange? Come on over here,
Trump, you better leave them women alone.
Oh, that's terrible. Oh, wow. How are you? I won't ask you where you've been, okay? I promise. But it's great to have you. It's great to have. I mentioned your name. I said, where's Angelina? He said, she'll be right back, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And Aubrey and Ava Jane, Angelina says the tax relief for childcare and education are a foundation for stability and dignity. I think those were your words, right? Stability and dignity. Good words for her family. And with the One Big Beautiful Bill, we're delivering both, empowering hundreds of thousands of families to choose the public, private, charter, religious school or the home school of their choice. And Angelina, thank you very much for being with us. Beautiful. Beautiful. So this bill will also be the single most important piece of border legislation ever to cross the floor of Congress. We will hire 3,000 new Border Patrol officers and 10,000 new ICE agents. And these people are great. I tell you what, I got to know a lot of them. And we have tremendous representation. They've been for me from day one.
This is Trump
in fact,
on
I
the
shouldn't
big
say this,
beautiful
but they
bill,
endorsed
guys.
me when I first ran, almost at the beginning. And they weren't sure if they were allowed to endorse me. And they said, we don't care, we're endorsing you. But they were great, and they've been my friends ever since. But think of it, so we're going to hire 3,000 new Border Patrol officers, 10,000 new ICE agents. And, you know, these ICE guys, they go into war zones, and they're tough, and they love our country. And if you're not going to be tough, you're not going to do well. But they are tough, and they'll break into a pack, and they call them a pack. Some of these packs come out of the jails of Venezuela. They come from places that you don't want to know about. They're gang members that have been all sent in here through Biden's open door stupid policy. The dumbest policy, I think, well, we have a lot of dumb policies, but the worst, I think, is open borders, where anybody comes into our country totally unvetted, totally unchecked. And they're drug dealers, and they're people that we don't want them, and they're murderers, you know, they're murderers. I told you, over 11,000 murderers, they're in here. 50% of those, by the way, murdered more than one person, and they came in, no check-in, no anything. It's so sad. What that man has done to this country, we should never forget it, okay? We should never, ever forget it. With that whole group of people, I don't even think it was him. He didn't believe in open borders. He didn't believe in men playing in women's sports or transgender for everybody. But what that group of people has done to this country will never, ever, I don't think we can ever allow history to forget it. What they've done to us is so sad. We're going to fully fund the final sections of Border Wall, impose a new remittance tax on money sent back to foreign countries, and dramatically increase deportations to a bare minimum of 1 million illegal aliens per year. And what we're doing is we're really going after the criminal aliens, of which we have plenty to work with. People say, well, that's a lot, isn't it? Well, remember, these countries are very smart. They're headed up by people I know. In almost all cases, they're very smart people, and they're people of great common sense. They're not sending their good people out. They're sending the bad people out, and they put them into caravans. I think I came up with that name, but somebody did. It's a great name, a caravan. Thousands, and sometimes as many as 30,000 people walking right into our country. Again, last month we had none.
Beautiful
Think of
bill
that.
is what BBB
people
means.
say it's almost impossible, but they come in, and at a minimum, they're not people that work very hard. They're people that are on welfare. They don't want them. They don't want them. They give them to us. It's incredible what's happened, and it's so sad to see. It's so sad, could make you just sick to your stomach when you think about it. I was going to say it could make you cry, but I like to pretend I never cry. I don't want to be a crier, but it makes you sick to think of what they did. What they did to us is just sick. And guys, if we didn't have a Tom Homan, and if we didn't have some of the guys that we have working so hard and dangerously, the country wouldn't stand a chance. But we're getting them out, not as fast as they came in, because they came in and you'd see hundreds of thousands pour into our country in a day. But we're getting them out. And here today is Angel Dad, Joe Abraham, the Angel Moms and Angel Dads, these are incredible people. They lost their precious 20-year-old daughter, Katie, in a hit and run after she was struck by an illegal alien from Guatemala. Katie was stopped at a traffic light, rear-ended, full force, going 60, 70 miles an hour right into the back of her car while she stopped. And she died immediately. And her killer, I think you could really say the killer, fled the scene. And Joe, we will end this invasion once and for all, and we're always going to remember the memory of Katie, that beautiful, beautiful 20-year-old daughter of yours. Where's Joe? Is she around here? Joe? Come here, Joe. Come here. Ah, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Thank you, Joe, very much. Also with us is Sarah Stewart from Kerrville, Texas, who lost her brother to the fentanyl epidemic that has inundated her small town. Our bill provides billions and billions of dollars to stop fentanyl and other illicit narcotics. We're also charging other countries like Mexico, Canada, and China billions of dollars in taxes that we put on because they've allowed people that are selling fentanyl to go through their countries, or in the case of China, they send it here. And
this is for
pay a lot
educational
of money,
purposes
at least,
only.
but would rather stop it. I think we're doing a big job of that, but would rather stop it. And other illicit narcotics pouring across the border and stealing more American lives. And thank you, Sarah will not rest until that fight is done. We're gonna get that fight done. Sarah Stewart is where? Sarah? Hi, Sarah. Beautiful. Thank you. Good guy, huh?
Is Trump really making
I
America
can see
great
that.
again,
I also
guys?
want to thank the president of the National Border Patrol. His name is Paul Perez. He's been with me from the beginning. And Brandon before him. These are great people. I've gotten very friendly with some of these
Let's
people
go,
from
Sniper.
Border Patrol and ICE
Liz
because I really,
says no.
I'd call them once every 2 or 3 days. How we doing? How we doing? How we doing? If you remember, Kamala
Let's
was the
say the
border
best
czar.
president ever.
And in 4 years, she never made one call
I
to
see a
Paul
bunch
or
of yeses.
Brandon or anybody else. And I'd like to have Paul come up, say a couple of words if you're here, Paul. Where are you,
Ignorance
Paul?
is bliss.
Oh, there
That's
you
what
are.
Paul said.
Go ahead.
President Trump made promises that he's kept. Now it's time for Congress to back him up. We need to end the chaotic and recklessness that Biden allowed into this country. The millions of people that are out there, we're going to get with this big, beautiful bill. We've got the funding, we've got the technology, we need everything in that bill to get it done so that no more families are victimized. And those that have victimized families, we can go get them out with ICE. Our officers and agents are not afraid.
What's up,
We're ready
Summer
to
Marie?
take this fight to them, and we've been so because of President Trump's leadership. Thank you, sir.
He's been a great friend of the country. He really has, and he's worked with Tom Holman and Christie and all the people that work so hard. They have been incredible. And I wasn't going to do this, but I see Tom Holman is sitting there, and I have to call him up. Look at that. I don't call up the Speaker of the House. I don't call up Marco or Peter or anyone, but I want to call this guy because this guy is keeping us very, very safe. Come on up, Tom.
Well, look, I think this
Oh,
issue of
Tom
the big beautiful
Omen.
bill should
Uh-oh.
be nonpartisan. I don't know what the hell's the matter with everybody up in Congress? People are dying every day. ICE is arresting 3 times as many criminals that the Biden administration did. We're taking public safety threats and national security threats off the street every single day.
Old Tom Hope.
We got over 600,000 illegal aliens with criminal histories walking the streets of this country. We got less than 5,000 deportation officers. This should be a no-brainer. The more resources we get, if we get this bill passed, we got more agents on the road. We buy more beds, we get more transportation flights. More agents mean more bad guys arrested, taken off the streets of this country every single day. Every day we arrest a public safety threat or national security threat. This makes this country much safer. Who the hell would be against that? And I get irritated, I get pissed off because I'm sick of meeting angel moms and dads.
Let's go, Tom.
You want to talk about family separation?
Tom,
They
say
bury
mad.
their children. So I've done this since 1984. I've worked for 6 different presidents. No one has had the success of the Trump administration. We got the most secure border in the history of this nation today.
Tom say he's ticked off. He's ticked, guys.
But we need more border wall. Border walls save lives. Women and children can't get over that wall, which means they go to a place where there's not a wall. And what's waiting on them? The men and women of the border patrol who take care of the humanitarian needs and save their lives. We already got fentanyl seizures down half. Fentanyl seizures should be 100%. We should have 0 fentanyl coming to this country.
Tom been working on this here speech right here, guys. He's been working on this speech. He's been waiting to be able to say what he want to say. Let's go, Tom Homan.
We need money to help secure that border at a higher level. Stop the fentanyl from coming in. Stop the sex trafficking.
It's your time to shine,
Stop the
Tom.
inspected terrorists coming across that border. Right now, I was looking at the stats today. ICE is arresting a record number of known suspected terrorists in this country, along with the FBI. With more money, we can arrest more of these people, make this country safer. This is a nonpartisan issue. Let's make this country safe again. So to the Democrats and the Republicans and the Independents, I don't care who you're from, pass the bill so we make this country safe, so we can stop the violence against ICE officers. Let's make this country safe again. And without that bill, it's going to be a hard road. We got a lot of people to look for, a lot of people to arrest, a lot of national security threats we know are in this country. We need to find them. We need more money to do that. We need more agents to do that. For God's sake, let's pass this bill and get this done.
Old Tom was ticked off, guys. He said he ain't standing for it. What the hell is wrong with you people? That's what Tom said.
He got so angry, he didn't even shake my hand or
I
look at me.
told you he was angry, y'all. He was mad.
But he's right. He's right. And we have no money for the border if we don't pass this bill. We have virtually nothing. And so we're going to get it done for you, Tom, and for all of the people that have worked with you. It's been amazing, the job you've done. And just in finishing, look, this is the largest tax
Tom
cut
say
in
he's
the
sick of this
history our
crap.
country. They want to give you, the Democrats want to give you the biggest tax increase in the history of our country. They have things, whether it's border or economic development or no tax on tips and Social Security and no tax on overtime, and all these different things. There are hundreds of things here. It's so good. And we're going to also cut costs. We're cutting $1.7 trillion in this bill, and you're not going to feel any of it. And your Medicaid is left alone. It's left the same.
What's up, AC?
Your Medicare and your Social Security are strengthened. We're not cutting. The Democrats are going to destroy all 3 of them because it's not sustainable. They'll end up cutting your Medicare, Medicaid in half. So we're going to do a real job. It's so important. So if you can, call your senators, call your congressmen. We have to get the vote. I want to thank you. You have been unbelievable, Mr.
What's
Speaker.
up, Paul?
You have worked round the clock for months, And, you know, I shouldn't say this, but we don't want to have grandstanders where 1 or 2 people raise their vote. We vote no. And they do it to grandstand, that's all. Not good people. They know who I am, who I'm talking about. I call them out. But we don't need grandstanders. We have to get our country back and bring it back strong. And our country is going to be stronger, bigger, better than ever before. We're going to make it better than ever before. And that's despite the bad hand that we were dealt 6 months ago. We were dealt a really bad hand. We were dealt a sick hand. It's unbelievable. You know, when I came back yesterday, as you know, I made a big trip to a place where we had 28 countries represented, and we did something that's never been done. They've raised the number of money, the amount of money that they've been to $1 trillion a year, and that's for world safety. But they all asked me the same question.
Jerome says
They said,
lies.
how could you have allowed this to happen to your country? I said, I didn't do it. But they said, how could you allow people to pour in? They don't understand it. They all have borders. They have fences, they have walls, or they have just strong people standing there. You can't do it. And they said to me, you know, it's amazing that they allowed these things to happen, and it's amazing too. I agree. You know, as a business guy, I always like to understand where the other side's coming from. What do they want? What do they get? And, you know, you can make good deals based on understanding the other side. I never understood the other side in this case. Why would they allow people to pour into our country unchecked? You know, I can see people wanting people to come in, and you let them come in. You have a vetting process. You let good people. We're letting a lot of good people in, but they're coming in legally. But why would you allow people to come in that you can look at them and say, big trouble, big trouble? Why would you do it? It's nobody understands. And a lot of people say voting, but, you know, we've got to strengthen up our elections because the voting is crooked as hell. Got to strengthen it up, but it's not that.
Trump say the voting crooked.
They're stupid. And
some say that's how he got in the office, by crooked voting. I'm just saying.
But we love our country, and we're going to stop this madness.
But he said the voting is
very crooked. We're going to get this bill approved, and all of the things that I've been talking about now for 2 years on the campaign trail, and we won, remember, we won every single swing state. We won by millions of votes. We won everything. We won every, it was a landslide. We won something that nobody talks about.
What's up, Crapo?
You have thousands of districts. We won 2,750 to 505. Think of that. That's why when you see a map, the whole map is red. That stands for Republican, by the way, because it stands for a lot of other things too, but it stands for Republican with a little piece of blue on each side. But that's why, think of that, 2,750 districts to 505 districts. That's what, this was a slaughter. But it gave us a mandate to do some great things. And I want to thank John Thune, and I want to thank the speaker, and I want to thank Marco and everybody here. Everybody
CJ
here.
said if his lips are
They have
moving,
been
he's
so
lying.
incredible. Pam, you've been unbelievable as the Attorney General. We appreciate it. Not easy. Not easy. And we're coming back faster than anybody ever thought possible. I told you what they said to me on just trips by very smart people. But we're going to make this, we're going to do this very quickly. It's happening a lot faster than even I thought possible. And we're going to be celebrating very quickly, and we're going to be celebrating for a long time because we're turning our country around. We're getting our country back. And we're ruling with common sense, you know, whether you're conservative or liberal, or as they like to say, progressive. They don't like the word liberal anymore. Progressive, I think it's a beautiful word too. That's why I call them liberal. It's too nice a word. I don't know how you can be progressive when you're turning the country backwards. But no matter what you are, it's all about common sense. And I think that's the way I've ruled. I do what's right. I want to have borders. I don't want to have transgender for anybody that happens to leave the house at a young age, the things they do. I don't want to have men playing in women's sports. That's got to be, you know, they say it's an 80-20. I think it's a 97-3 issue. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. There was a long-distance race the other day, or at least reasonably recently, and they had a top man and they had top woman, but it was a woman's race, and the man entered. He happened to be transitioned. Isn't that lovely? And he entered the race, and he beat the champion woman by 5 hours and 14 seconds. 5 hours, that's a lot. Think of it, you're waiting 5 hours for your beautiful daughter to come in. Come on, baby, let's go. You can do it. He won by 5 hours and 14 seconds.
Yeah, there should be no men in women's sports. I agree with that.
And they don't want to change. I see it the other day. Guys like Schumer, our great Palestinian senator, this guy, no, he's changed. He used to like Jewish people. Now he's totally against Jewish people. It's the most incredible transformation I think I've ever seen. But who would allow this to happen? In other sports, the same thing. Try the weightlifting numbers someday. You want to see some big differences. In a million years, the women will never catch these numbers. It's not going to happen. And it's very demeaning to women. And I don't like it when it's demeaning to women. So we're turning the country around fast. We love you all. Thank you very much. And good luck. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so that's what Trump had to say on the big, beautiful bill. He says the best thing ever. Elon Musk most definitely feels different about the big, beautiful bill. Most definitely, he called it one of the worst bills ever proposed. Check this out. Hold on, continue to work on that button. We ain't going nowhere. I'm just going to what Elon Musk said. Let's go.
Overnight, Republicans released their full bill containing tax and spending cuts that could impact millions of Americans. In a post tonight, Elon Musk says it will destroy U.S. jobs and cause strategic harm. Nicole Killian has the latest.
A rare Saturday session in the Senate.
We have before us today a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver legislation to create a safer, stronger, and more prosperous America.
Senate Republicans are trying to pull a fast one on the American people.
Lawmakers work through their holiday recess, racing to meet a July 4th deadline to advance President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. The president stayed in town too, golfing with senators, urging them to tee it up.
It can go longer, but we'd like to get it done.
Overnight, Senate Republicans released the 900-plus page bill, which includes more funding for the president's top priorities, including border security, defense, and an extension of his 2017 tax cuts. But it comes with deep spending cuts to food assistance and Medicaid, including a projected $930 billion reduction, according to the Congressional Budget Office.
What they're trying to do to cut back on these health care programs and health insurance for 16 million Americans to pay for tax breaks for wealthy people.
Even some Republicans have threatened to oppose the package, citing concerns about the potential impact to rural hospitals. But others say it's time to act.
Are we ready to put our pens down and move forward?
To address some GOP concerns, the bill now includes a $25 billion rural hospital fund. It also rolls back clean energy tax credits from the Biden era, angering Democrats. In fact, they're hoping to slow this vote down by demanding that the entire bill be read on the Senate floor, which could take up to...
Which they did. They've been doing it for the last 2 days. They've been reading the entire bill.
15 hours. Nicole Killian, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
All right, so that was a little bit from that. I just wanted to remind y'all of what Elon Musk said, right? All right, so let's get back to the Senate floor. The Senate floor, where they are presenting their fors and against this big, beautiful bill that's been proposed by Trump, in his team, guys. They most definitely feel away. Let's go here.
Care Act 15 years ago. Of all the things that I've worked on in Congress, I think it had more positive impact to help the families across America than anything. We found a way to make health insurance more affordable for families 15 years ago. And to do it, we held hearings, 100 hearings on the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare is what they called it. Roundtables, walkthroughs. 2 committees spent a combined 21 days holding markups so that everyone could offer an amendment. Do you know how many amendments were made to the Obamacare program? 400. 400 votes in committee and on the floor on amendments.
This is live from Congress, guys. This is live.
Though not a single Republican senator ended up supporting the Obamacare when it was all over. What do we have here with this measure? At the end of the day, that legislation, the Obamacare, allowed more than 40 million Americans to gain health insurance. Today,
we're 40 likes away from 600. Double tap that screen if you have not, or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new.
Not a single one. 0 markups for senators to offer amendments. 400 amendments on Obamacare. None on this one until it comes to the floor today. 0 bipartisan input. Our friends on the Republican side have said basically, it's a big deal. Take it or leave it. Should this bill become law, do you know what we've done? Thrown 16 million Americans off health insurance and closed many vulnerable small hospitals. All to pay for tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. Maybe some of my Republicans are okay with that. I don't think the American people are. I'm hoping that sanity and common sense prevail. We need 4. We need 4 senators to step up and say, stop this train. We've got to sit down and do our homework. We cannot expose the American families and the American economy to do this in the name of preserving tax breaks for the wealthiest people. Elon Musk seems to be doing okay in life, right? The wealthiest man in the world. Do you know what the tax break is for Elon Musk on the bill?
Wow, then he talked about Elon. I just showed y'all what Elon said.
Money. To him, he won't even notice it. giving him a tax break he won't notice, and taking away health insurance from families who will be devastated, 16 million around the country. It's an important choice, and it's one we should make the right one. I yield the floor.
President,
I recognize the senator from Kentucky.
in deciding whether to vote for the big, not-so-beautiful bill,
Big,
I've asked a very specific
not-so-beautiful
question.
bill. Let's go.
Will the deficit be more or less next year? The answer, without question, is this bill will grow the deficit. The federal government has fancy formulas and hundreds of wonky accountants who inform us of their
Wonky. What that
projections
word
over
mean?
10
Wonky.
years.
I have never heard that one before.
You often can't
Wonky
trust these
accounts.
projections.
Wow. Wonky.
In an excellent piece written by the Foundation for Economics and Education entitled "The CBO's Projections Are Worse Than Useless," Eric Schuler writes, "Long-term analysis and language is commonplace in U.S. national politics, but it achieves no useful outcome. It confuses far more than it clarifies. It does not provide accurate estimates of long-term results. It does not improve the average voter's understanding of policy effects. And it gives politicians a means to claim they are being fiscally responsible without actually ever exercising any prudence whatsoever. Sometimes the predictions are off because a new Congress is elected and changes the law. Eric Schuler writes that for any projection of a 10-year budget to be accurate, the Congressional Budget Office has to assume that the law won't change for 10 years, even as most of the politicians that make the laws risk being replaced every 2 years, and all of them advocate for changes of one stripe or another.
I'm going to go back to where I come from and tell them y'all wonky around
Congress has a
here.
knack for starting any proposed
Y'all
cuts
wonky around
in
here,
the
man.
later years, while letting spending run wild in the immediate future. Sometimes these predictions are off by $1 trillion or so because the economy grew more slowly or more quickly than anticipated. Bruce Thompson, a former Senate aide and Assistant Secretary of Treasury,
Yeah, I'm going to
writes,
say wonky, though,
the
because that's
Congressional
what they
Budget
said.
Office miscalculated the deficit last year by $1 trillion. So in deciding whether to vote for any big, monstrous bill, it helps to ask the right question. To me, the most pertinent question is, how will the bill affect the deficit in the next year? Currently, our deficit is estimated to be a little under $2 trillion this year. What will happen to the debt in 2026 if this bill passes? Well, using the math most favorable to the supporters of the bill, referred to as the policy baseline, the deficit in 2026 will still be $270 billion more than this year. So even using the math, even using the formulas that the supporters of the bill like, the deficit will grow by $270 billion next year. That's just not good if you profess to be fiscally conservative. Why will the deficit grow next year? Well, even if you argue that the 2017 tax cuts don't need to be counted in the calculation at all, the new tax cuts add up to $234 billion to the debt next year. In addition, the big not-so-beautiful bill adds new spending of over $500 billion, military, border, agricultural subsidies, etc. That spending is front-loaded and will be spent in the first 4 years of the 10-year window. Legislative spending is one of the few items in the bill that is exact. It isn't estimated. If they say they'll spend $500 billion, they're going to spend $500 billion, all in the first few years. So in order not to add to the deficit, the BBB, the big not-so-beautiful bill, has to have corresponding spending cuts to counter all the new spending. Unfortunately, the spending cuts are backloaded to the final 5 years of the 10-year window when several tax cuts expire and the spending increases are finished. In addition, elections occur every 2 years and could easily wipe out any perceived savings that might occur in the later years. The only real certainty in this budget drama are the budget years coming in the immediate future. It's the next year or two are the only things that are actually of any certainty. So if we analyze this bill from that perspective, we discover that the bill increases the debt by $500 billion in the first 5 years. This is not the CBO projection that Republicans have not liked. This is the projection they are using, says the debt will add $500 billion in the first 5 years. Now, they say somehow, miraculously, in the last 5 years, it gets to a $500 billion in savings. So it's $1 trillion shift from year 5 to year 10. The CBO scores it differently, not as encouraging, and says it adds over $3 trillion in debt. So which is it? Does this bill save $500 billion over 10, or does it add $3 trillion over 10? The truth is that that even a person with a magic crystal ball, it's anybody's guess. Which brings us back to, maybe we have to judge the effects of the big, not so beautiful bill by looking at what happens to the debt next year. Supporters of the bill admit it adds $270 billion to the debt next year.
The big, not so beautiful bill.
That's the only thing we know for certain. We don't know what happens in year 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, but we know next year this bill will grow the deficit by $270 billion.
Whoa!
In addition,
$270 billion, guys,
by $5 trillion. What does that mean? That is an admission that they know they aren't controlling the deficit. They know that the ensuing years will add trillions more. So we're adding $2 trillion this year, but they're anticipating, the authors of the bill anticipating adding more than $2 trillion next year. That doesn't sound at all conservative to me, and that's why I'm a no.
He said, and that's why he's a no, guys.
I recognize the senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, joining me on the
please
floor
don't
are
pass.
experts in the budget process, former chairs and ranking members, Senator Murray, who's been Senate Budget Chair from 2013 to 15, Senator Whitehouse, who's Senate Budget Chair 2023 through 2025, Senator Van Hollen, who was the ranking Democrat on the House Budget Committee in 2011 through 2017. We're here to address a fundamental violation of the law, of Law 313, Section 313, and it is the set of rules for reconciliation. To try to summarize this in the simplest words possible, 100 senators voted to have a special fast-track, filibuster-free pathway solely for reducing the debt. First principle was no deficits could be created in a 10-year period. Our Republican colleagues blew that up in 1996 when they wanted to do a tax bill that would create massive deficits. Then, a second pillar was no deficits in any title of the bill in any year after the first 10 years. This bill right now, if this passes, that blows that up. And the third was use honest numbers, Congressional Budget Office numbers. I have a letter here from the Congressional Budget Office, and they say, the estimate is relative to CBO's January 2025 baseline. CBO is required to construct its baseline under the assumptions specified in the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act and the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Act. In response to your questions about the cost of Title VII, the question was, would Title VII increase the deficit by more than the $1.5 trillion over the 2025 through 34 period? The answer is yes. CBO estimates that enacting would increase the deficit by nearly $3.5 trillion over the 2025-2034 period, $3.5 trillion. We then asked, would it increase deficits in the years beyond 2034, beyond the 10-year window? The answer was yes. But if you ask my Republican friends, they say, no, no, no. We're inventing a new theory. And that is that anything that the 2017 tax giveaway to the billionaires put into the law that expired after 10 years, we're just going to assume it would have continued, and therefore us continuing it doesn't cost anything. That's a pretty crazy notion, that if they didn't put it into the bill, the law says it ends, but they say, no, no, it would have continued anyway through some magical way. So therefore, a tax break for the really wealthy costs nothing. This is exactly the type of lying to ourselves, smoke and mirrors that 100 senators agreed to end back in 1974. And that it has continued, that piece of it has continued in place for 51 years until this moment in this Senate by this Republican majority says we're going to start lying to ourselves and lying to the American people about what this bill costs. But we're not going to lie. We're going to tell you the truth. This bill costs well over $3 trillion over 10 years and some $30+ trillion on top of existing deficits and debt because of the provisions that are in this particular bill. Our current debt, national debt, that's been run up since the Declaration of Independence is around $36.5 trillion. This bill basically matches that in creating that much additional debt over the next 30 years. This is a huge assault on the programs that we can sustain as a nation for the people of America, people struggling to get on their feet. So we want affordable housing programs. We want to have fair and quality health care. We want to have an education system that gives every child the opportunity to thrive.
Billionaires
we want to
win,
create
guys.
a robust economy through investment so there are good jobs, because no government program is better than a good job. All those imperiled by this bill because the Republican leadership is lying to the American people and lying to ourselves. So we're here to tell the truth. And first of all, we're going to turn to Senator Murray, who, as I mentioned, was the Senate Budget Chair from 2013 to 2015.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Washington State.
I thank the senator from Oregon and our other budget chairs, ranking members from previous years, because this is really important. Mr. President, there are some things you can't change with legislation, despite what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle seem to believe. For example, 1 + 1 is 2. And while $1 trillion might have a lot of zeros in it, it is, in fact, a much, much bigger number. Now, that might sound obvious, but apparently my colleagues across the aisle need a little reminder, because right now, Republicans are pretending not to get it. It is almost beyond belief, and it is certainly beyond common sense. After years of complaining about the debt, in fact, at the same time they're talking about how we need to address the debt, Republicans now are suddenly pretending they don't know how to count. Republicans are suddenly pretending the parliamentarian doesn't exist if they don't talk to her. Republicans are suddenly pretending that precedent doesn't exist if they just fake amnesia, and that norms and consequences for breaking them will disappear if they wish it away really hard. My preschool students had more common sense. Republicans should know if they replace math with magic, if they tear up the Senate process, if they blow off the Senate parliamentarian, that bill will come due. And not just the bill for $4 trillion blown on tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. The bill will also come due for trashing this Senate process and precedent when Republicans are no longer in the majority. Mr. President, if Republicans are serious about plowing forward with rewriting or ignoring Senate procedure and the laws of mathematics, I just ask, spare me the empty excuses. Spare me the explanations that
we're 14 likes away from 600, guys.
You are doing.
Double tap that screen
really
or click the 3 dots, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new.
Oh, it's fine to break the process in half because we say it's fine. Oh, it's fine. We have the authority to ignore math. Give me a break. To every Republican who really thinks that is a convincing argument, to anyone who thinks we can is just an acceptable rationale for going nuclear and pretending the most expensive bill in the history of our country can be paid for by some magic bean counting. Here is my challenge to you.
Thank you to everybody that hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you're new.
Your constituents. Tell them it's okay. Yes, the debt's going to be $4 trillion higher 10 years from now. That's true. But it's fine. We voted on it. And we get to say $1 trillion is actually 0. Go ahead. See how that works for you. And you may as well tell them you are voting against gravity next, because that's just as reasonable. And don't forget, when you tell your families back home that trillions of dollars in tax cuts for billionaires and companies are free because you waved a wand or you said some magic words, don't forget to tell them those are just tax cuts for the billionaires, not for working families.
I told y'all that's what they said.
Yeah, I voted to say $1 trillion is nothing, but we still need to kick people off.
$1 trillion is a lot.
That's just too expensive. We still need to close those hospitals. We have to cut costs, and we still have to kick people off SNAP because the debt is out of control. And don't forget to mention that, no, we can't afford childcare. We can't afford paid family leave. We can't afford to solve your problems. Magic math is apparently just for billionaires. You all are getting less. Please, Republicans, send that message to your constituents. Just see how it goes over. Because you can fool yourself, but you are not going to fool the American people. They don't get to balance their budget with magic math. They don't get to pretend $1 trillion is nothing. And they don't get to pretend that this bill is free. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what policy baseline you all want to use in DC, those families back home, they're the ones who will be paying the actual cost. I yield back to the Senator from Oregon.
Yield to a question.
I would.
In the time that you were budget chair, did you ever contemplate a situation in which you argued that renewing a tax break that was by law expiring would somehow have no impact on the deficit?
To my friend from Oregon, I never would have contemplated and I never would have put it forward. And I happen to know that if I had have suggested that my Republican colleagues would have been all over me telling me that breaks the rules.
Thank you very much. We're turning to Senator Whitehouse, who was Senate Budget Chair from 2023 to 2025.
Thank you, Senator Merkley. I mentioned earlier the history of the section that the Republican budget chairman is using to perform this multi-trillion-dollar magical act of making huge deficit-busting numbers disappear. It's called Section 312. It has been used before, but it has always been minor, corrective, and bipartisan. I mentioned earlier the adjustment that was made on a bipartisan basis to the Power Marketing Administration's numbers to return the CBO to an agreement that the Senate had previously made. That was not enormously consequential. This is almost certainly the first time you're hearing about it. Again, in 2023, as budget chair with Republican Chair Jody Arrington on the House side, we made a $105 million adjustment to a dairy program. Today we're talking about trillions. This was a $105 million adjustment. Again, bipartisan, minor, and corrective, fixing a technical issue on a bipartisan basis. Last year, Speaker Johnson and Leader Schumer agreed to direct CBO to score a fee program with an OMB estimate, and they used this rule again, collaborating on a bipartisan basis with a matter that was minor and corrective. Well, this is different. This is trillions. And Republicans are using this rule to pretend that it's not. Well, there are lots of ways to look at who's right. Time obviously will tell. But this bill actually has a tell right in it. Page 754 of this bill is the reality check on whether or not they're running up the debt by trillions. We know they're running up the debt by trillions because they say so in this bill. You can play Senate procedural fakery.
Simply Intellect says if this bill passes, poor people are in big trouble. That's what they've been saying the whole time.
Soon, you hit reality. And you hit reality in the real world of markets and selling treasury bonds and having a legal debt limit. If this did not raise the debt by trillions, they would not need to raise the debt limit by trillions. Here is the text. Subtitle C, increase in debt limit. Section 72001, modification of limitation on the public debt. The limitation under Section 3101B of Title 31 is increased by $5 trillion. They're dodging the parliamentarians'
Good Lord, that's a lot of
ruling
money.
by letting the budget chair make a $1 trillion magic wand maneuver because they know pretty darn well what the parliamentarians' ruling would be. And how do they know what the parliamentarians' ruling would be? Because the answer's in their own damn bill. I yield the floor.
Would the senator from Rhode Island yield for a question?
Of course.
You mentioned the use of Section 312, which gives some flexibility to resolve, as you put it, minor issues on a bipartisan basis to correct an issue, a technical issue. In those cases you mentioned, were those on a reconciliation bill?
Were they on a reconciliation bill? I don't believe they were.
No, they were not.
They were
In fact, that power has never been used on a reconciliation bill because the following Section 313 gives very specific instructions. It says each provision must be costed out for its impact on both outlays, the spending side, or revenue, should it be a revenue measure. And if you're saying, well, how do I do that? You say, well, if we pass this provision, what will it cost as compared to not passing this provision, not having it in the bill? That's a comparison to current law. This ability of the budget chair, and actually the law says the budget committee, to correct technical issues on narrow issues on a bipartisan basis, basically solve snarly little budgeting questions like on the dairy program you mentioned, never used on reconciliation ever, never used on a broad basis ever, never used to create a lie about what a bill costs in this fashion. Now we're turning to Senator from Maryland, who was ranking Democrat on the House Budget Committee for 6 years. So he brings a lot of experience and knowledge about the budget process. Senator Van Hollen.
Well, Mr. President, I thank my colleague and the ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee, Senator Merkley. I just want to start by reading a statement. This is a quote. Anyone that says current policy baseline is the right way to go is engaging in intellectual and economic fraud. It's intellectually lazy. My basic mission in life is just to try to create some honest math, unquote. That wasn't from Senator Van Hollen or anyone on this floor. This was from a Republican member of the House, Congressman Schweikert from Arizona, talking about exactly the issue we're debating here in the United States Senate. Let me read you another quote, a little more colorful. Again, about this Republican accounting fraud. Quote, this is fairy-based, and they're just full of crap, and I'm going to call them out on it. Republican Congressman Chip Roy of Texas. They're right. This is a fraud. This is a fraud that would make the Enron scammers blush. And I quote those House members for a reason, because we can disagree with what they did in their bill, and I strongly disagree with it. But at least they used honest math, and at least they used the math that is required by the rules here in the Senate. The honest math that Republicans here in the Senate want to dodge because it will both tell the American people just how big the deficits are, but also because it will screw up their whole entire plan. Just so people listening have some sense of how these Senate numbers are designed to disguise the real impact of their deficits. Look at, for example, the basic individual tax rates in the House bill. When they extended those tax rates from the Trump 2017 bill, it costs $2.2 trillion under what we call the current law baseline, which is the reality baseline, because that's what it will cost when you understand that they sunset at the end of this year, and that's what it'll cost to renew them. So under honest accounting, it's $2.2 trillion. Under the Senate fraudulent accounting, that $2.2 trillion deficit
We don't got
miraculously
nothing to do
becomes
with
an
our show
$83 billion
speed over here, Tisha.
deficit. Let's look at the House permanent extension of key deductions for businesses. That would cost,
How about you spam
honest
everything
accounting,
news in the chat?
$821 billion. Under the Senate accounting scam, $6 billion. So what we're seeing here is this blatant, deliberate effort to mislead the American people about the true costs of this bill, about the deficit impacts of this bill, about how it will impact the debt. And we all know that when the debt goes up and we have to put more of our costs on Uncle Sam's credit card, it puts upward pressure on interest rates. That means
Brian?
Americans will pay higher interest rates on their mortgages, on their car loans, and everything else. So when you try to hide the deficit impact, you really are trying to fool the American people, and we're here to blow the whistle. Now, I just want to show our colleagues something that was put together by the Committee for a Responsible Budget. And if you look at the blue, you can see for each year, starting this year, 2025, 2006, the blue is what Senate Republicans claim their bill will add to the deficit. The red is how much more it will actually add to the deficit. So at the end of this 10-year period, what you see is Senate Republicans are claiming that their bill will add $441 billion, which is still a big number, but the real number when you do honest accounting, when you add up all of these, it's $4.2 trillion, a much bigger
Woo, that's a lot of
number.
money.
Now, I do want to point something out on this chart. I think everybody watching should understand it. If you look at these orange parts, these are the additional deficits from tax cuts. Starting here in year 2029, 2030, you'll see that they actually do start going down. Why is that? It's because the tax cut that President Trump promised for no tax on tips, they phased those out. This is all just a make-believe ruse. Yeah, we start providing no tax on tips, but those disappear. The tax breaks for wealthy people, they go on, and they go on not just for this 10-year period, but the
So
reason
basically they saying
violate
that the
all
common
rules
folks
of reconciliation
will suffer if this bill
is
passes.
because they keep
this
going
bill
on
is
after
for
that.
rich people.
And as Senator Merkley said, if you look at the entire history of the Byrd rule, that's Senator Byrd, it was designed to make sure that 51 senators through a vote could not make these kind of permanent changes in any area. But specifically, they were worried about areas that increased the national deficit and debt. So what Republican senators are doing is not only misleading the American people, but they're violating the entire structure that carved out this special procedure that we call reconciliation for the budget, which was intended to lower deficits and debts, not have them go on forever. As Senator Merkley has pointed out, I think if you look over a 30-year period, we're talking about $35 trillion plus additional to the debt. And Republicans want to hide that from the American people. That is budget fraud, pure and simple, and it is a violation of the rules of the United States Senate. This whole special structure that was created not to blow bigger holes in the debt and deficits, but to actually try to constrain them. So shame on everybody who's part of this fraud on the American people. I yield back my time.
Senator from Maryland yield for a question.
I will.
I found it very interesting that you pointed out that these tax provisions for the middle class, no tax on tips, is phased out, and no tax on overtime is phased out. And what you're saying, I believe, is that when they put into this bill that a tax break is ending, they're saying that it doesn't cost any more in the following years.
So they are certainly saying that their current policy baseline that they want us to make believe about would say that this wouldn't cost them. In other words, if they extended this, it wouldn't cost anything. It is interesting to note, not only does that expose the fraud behind the current policy baseline, but they made a very deliberate choice. Even though they now say that they can make these tax cuts permanent and still comply with the rules, they decided to make the tax cuts for very rich people permanent. But even though they say it's not going to cost anything anymore to provide, tax cuts with no tax on tips, they're phasing those out. And there are all of these areas are where President Trump made promises that he was going to take care of some working people. Well, man, those go away fast. Tax cuts for the rich, they go on for not just the full 10 years, but they keep going, which is why this is a violation of the entire reconciliation process.
So I find two things very interesting. They're saying if something was in the law...
We need 10 more subscribers, guys, to hit
2017,
36.8K, 20 more people
subscribe. It doesn't expire, and therefore extending doesn't cost anything. But in their own bill, when they say a provision expires, they say, no, it really does die, and therefore we're saving money in the years after. How is those two things possibly consistent?
Clearly they're not. I mean, this is literally magical thinking. This is why Republican Congressman Schweihart called this, or Chip Roy called this fairy dust, and why the Congressman from Arizona said this was pure intellectual and economic fraud. That's what it is. That's the bottom line.
Well, I really thank the senator from Maryland also pointing out that President
Shout out to everybody that subscribed to the channel. Continue to subscribe, man. We on our way to 37K.
But at his inauguration, who do you have standing behind him? Not champions for health care or champions for housing, certainly not champions for nutrition, or education, but in fact a series of...
Continue to vote on the poll in the chat.
And now
Should Congress pass
this bill, and I want to make sure the American people understand this, the provisions that were sweeteners to say we were helping working people are being phased out, but they're keeping all the tax breaks for billionaires.
Well, you're right. It was right down this hall, actually, that President Trump was sworn in, and he said it was going to be a new golden age for working people. Well, as you're pointing out, and this chart clearly shows, and their own budget reveals, it's clearly a golden age for billionaires and people who make a lot of money. And in this bill, they make sure that that golden age for very rich people goes on forever. They had a few little crumbs that they were throwing for a little while, we can see, to others, but just for a little while and just small amounts compared to the golden age for the billionaires.
Well, I must say my impression is, and I hope you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Republicans are embarrassed by the fact that they're proposing a bill that creates over $3 trillion in debt in 10 years and over $30 trillion over 30 years, and that the vast bulk of it goes to billionaires. And so they want to say, we're so embarrassed because we mentioned fiscal responsibility when we were running for office. We were going to get the budget under control, and they're doing the opposite. And they're embarrassed that they're doing these cuts in programs to fund tax breaks for billionaires, cutting regular health care, 16 million people losing health care for tax breaks for billionaires that, as you point out, go on and on and on, actually permanent. I would certainly love to yield to my colleague from Rhode Island.
When I was budget chairman, and we were trying to focus, for instance, on the
Democrats are putting up a good fight, guys. They're giving a lot of great points.
Climate-caused property insurance failures. What I would get is nonstop regular lectures from Republicans on the Budget Committee about how we had to take responsibility for the deficit, we had to reduce the debt, nothing else mattered as much, it was absolutely vital. And now, of course, we see that at their very first shot with the power to do anything through their majority and using reconciliation, they're raising the debt. They're raising the deficit, and not by little, but by trillions. And I'm wondering if in your time as chairman, or perhaps in Senator Murray's time on the committee, or perhaps in Senator Van Hollen's time over on the House committee, you were favored with such constant lecturing by Republicans about the debt and the deficit, and how credible that all seems right now.
I'll yield to Senator Murray.
I thank the senator for his question, because it's just stunning to me that the vast majority of debate, in fact, all the debate that came from Republicans at the time I was chair of the budget committee trying to put forward a smart budget for the United States of America, the only thing they talked about was debt and deficit. The only challenge they made to us was debt and deficit. The only time we tried to do anything for childcare, for healthcare, they threw the debt at us. So it is pretty stunning to me that now that they need to raise the debt for giving tax breaks to the very rich people who stood behind the president at his inauguration.
Once again, they say it's for the
play
rich
with
people.
The numbers and pretend it's not
Poor
real.
people will be in
trillion
trouble.
all of a sudden becomes zero, and I'm using some rule you've never heard of to try and pretend that this isn't real. It's fairy dust.
I just want to
She
say,
called it fairy dust.
answer the
Let's
question
go.
from the senator from Rhode Island and pick up on what my colleagues have said, that when I was the senior Democrat, the ranking member on the House Budget Committee, Paul Ryan was the chairman of the committee. And look, we disagreed on many things. We agreed on many things. We both agreed that we should get our deficits and debt under control. We had different ideas on how to do it. He wanted to privatize Medicare. We wanted to close tax breaks for the rich, but we wanted to close tax breaks for the rich. But the reality is that the holy grail, I mean, the only guiding North Star for Republicans at that time was we've got to bring down deficits and debt. This is not that Republican Party, not in any way, shape, or form. They clearly don't give a damn. In fact, they are worried, as we can see, that the American people still care, which is why they want to engage in this fraudulent scheme. But I'll just close on this. I remember one of those years, I believe it was the 2012 Republican convention. They even put up a debt clock. They put up a debt clock at the convention, right? I'm looking under my desk for the debt clock here because Republicans seem to have hidden it away forever. They want to wish it away. That's what they're telling us.
Wish it away, guys.
The bill.
The Democrats are putting up a great fight. You cannot deny
the debt
that.
limit by $5 trillion. So in reality, there's a huge hit to our debt, huge additions to our deficit, and it makes me a little bit frustrated to think back to all those lectures that I had to receive as budget chairman, which the senator from Maryland witnessed as a longtime member of the Senate Budget Committee, which the ranking member witnessed in his time on the Budget Committee, and which Senator Murray experienced when she chaired the Budget Committee. We have been lectured to death by our colleagues, and at the very first instance when they had the power to do something about it, they went 180 the other direction and are cranking the national debt in order to give big benefits to the rich people who fund their campaigns.
For a question, and I know we need to move on here. I just want to add one thing. It's not just that it's going to be debt. It's the cost to families because this debt they are putting in place. I would ask the chair of the Budget Committee now, as he knows as I do, people's houses are going to cost more because their mortgage interest rates are going to go up. Their cars' interest rates are going to go up. This is not just magic numbers sitting out there pretending they're not big. Real families are going to feel the cost of this debt and this deficit.
I really appreciate that point from my colleague from Washington State, because in this bill, it creates so much necessitated borrowing that CBO estimates that borrowing will cause interest rates to go up. And when interest rates go up for the Treasury, it goes up on your car loan, on your adjustable rate, a mortgage on your house, and just in general. These are costs that are borne by ordinary families. And I find it very interesting because the Republicans were demanding what they call the dynamic score, saying, well, won't these cuts produce such a great economy that it will kind of lift all boats and produce more revenue, and maybe the deficit won't be as bad. Here's what Congressional Budget Office found. Again, that's the nonpartisan, honest broker numbers. They found that because of the interest rates rising as a result of this massive sea of red ink that necessitates massive borrowing, that in fact those rising interest rates will hurt the economy. So there's no dynamic score that produces, oh, well, it isn't so bad after all. No, it's the opposite. And in fact, that dynamic argument has always been wrong. And we are looking at the folks who lectured, my colleague from Rhode Island, and I sat through many of those lectures as well. And I went, in my head, wait a minute, aren't these folks who did the massive ocean of red ink in the 2001 Bush tax bill? Aren't these the same folks that produced a massive ocean of ink in another tax bill 2 years later? Aren't the same ones that in 2017 did a massive ocean of red ink, and now they're doing it again? How could they possibly be putting themselves forward as deficit hawks or debt hawks? Not to mention that they cheered on two adventures that were a huge tragedy for the United States of America, trying to occupy Afghanistan and going to war in Iraq, which together added $8 trillion to our debt. And if you take a look at this chart, every time there is a Republican administration, the last deficit while they're in office compared to their first deficit goes up. For Clinton, it went down. That's fiscal responsibility. For George W. Bush, first term, it went up. For Obama, it went down. In other words, the Democratic presidents, time after time after time, Clinton, Obama, Biden, they reduced the deficits while they were in office. And the Republican presidents, while they were in office, every single time increased the deficits. So none of us want to hear any more talk about fiscal responsibility from across the aisle. You want to be fiscally responsible? Vote no on this bill, because this bill takes and fires 16 million people off of health care to finance those tax breaks for billionaires. This bill says 4 million children will go hungry to finance tax breaks for billionaires. This bill is families lose and billionaires win, and the debt goes up, endangering our ability to do basic programs for the entire next generation. It is wrong on every count. And I think collectively, we urge our colleagues to honor the argument they've made over time, that in fact they were concerned about the deficit. They were concerned about American families. Because if you are concerned about the deficit and debt, if you are concerned about families, you must vote no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I really want to thank my colleagues. I mean, you just said they used to call themselves deficit hawks. We need to call them deficit robins. They're robbing from you to pay for the billionaires. They are no longer deficit hawks. Agree? Thank you.
My colleagues, and I think as Senator Merkley said, if you care about deficit and debt and you don't want working families to have to pay for these tax cuts for billionaires and the rich, vote no on the bill.
I'd only add in my last words, watch. Everybody watch as this goes forward, because we will give the Republicans a chance to reduce the increase to the debt and the deficit by peeling back just the tax cuts for the greedy billionaires. We would be voting for working class tax cuts, I'm almost certain. We'll have a chance to bring into stark focus through our amendments what really matters to the folks on the other side of the aisle, and that is the tax cuts for the super wealthy, for the billionaires, for the corporations that are offshoring jobs, and for the biggest polluters in the country. That's where their sweet spot is, and we will expose that through these votes.
For those votes, we're not sure when they will start, because the Republicans are redrafting provisions of this bill right now. That's how little time this Senate will have to actually know what's in this 1,000-page bill with all kinds of special deals tucked into it for various members, we will have little time to see because they're still writing it. So those amendments that my colleague from Rhode Island mentioned, stay tuned. We're not sure if those amendments are going to start at 2 in the morning or if they'll start sometime later tomorrow, but stay tuned and pay attention because you're going to find out who stands with families and who stands to hurt families in favor of helping billionaires. Thank you.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, thank you. I think it's really important, the discussion we had right now about the deficit and debt, but I want to talk a little bit more about this bill in general. You know, recent KFF polling shows that this Republican big ugly betrayal bill is
the big ugly betrayal bill. Let's go.
Unpopular. In fact, this thing is more underwater than the Titanic. Nearly 2 in 3 Americans view this bill unfavorably. That goes up to nearly 3 in 4 when they learn it will kick millions off their health insurance. And it goes up to nearly 4 in 5 when they learn it will choke off funding to their local
If you're not
hospital.
subscribed to the
In
channel,
other
make
words,
sure
the
you
more the
subscribe,
American
guys.
people hear about what is actually in this big ugly betrayal bill, the more they dislike it. So with that in mind, I want to be here today to say a little bit more about what is in the
She said the
Republicans'
big
latest
ugly
version.
betrayal bill.
Spoiler alert, it is still big. It is still ugly, and it is an absolute betrayal of the people who sent us here to fight for them. The Republican plan is still going to mean over 16 million people losing health care as patients get kicked off their ACA plans. Kids and struggling families will get kicked off Medicaid. Rural hospitals are going to be forced to shut their doors. The Republican plan is still going to mean more starving families. New red tape is going to cut people off from their SNAP benefits that they need to put food on the table. And it is going to take away kids' school meals. The Republican plan still rips away support from the people in this country who are struggling the most to give away billions in tax breaks to billionaires who need help the least. In short, this latest version of Republicans' bill would still be one of the biggest transfers of wealth from the people at the bottom to the people at the top in our nation's history. When it comes to health care, this Republican abomination will cause millions of people to lose their insurance and see their costs skyrocket in one way or another. It will create mountains of new paperwork and bureaucratic barriers that are positively meant to kick people off their Medicaid and ACA coverage. And there is new sabotage to the ACA healthcare markets, which will mean more people losing their affordable coverage. Meanwhile, there is nothing, a big fat zero, when it comes to renewing the tax credits Democrats passed to lower your healthcare costs. That's right. While Republicans are showering their billionaire donors in new tax breaks, they will not lift a finger to extend healthcare tax credits that are saving millions of families thousands of dollars a year on health coverage. Instead, they're going to make sure people lose healthcare coverage, including our seniors, people with disabilities, pregnant women, millions of patients who rely on Medicaid. And let's not forget, the cuts in their bill are going to shutter hospitals across the country, especially in our rural areas. Do you have Medicaid, Medicare, employer-sponsored coverage? Regardless, Republicans have some pretty bad news for you, because it hardly matters what insurance you're on when you don't have a hospital to get care anymore. In Washington State, we have 14 rural hospitals that are fighting to survive and would likely close under this bill, mostly in areas represented by Republicans, I should add. Not to mention, we have 6 rural labor and delivery units that could be forced to close their doors under this bill. And you know what the Senate Republicans did? They made that problem worse. They put even more pressure on our rural hospitals. I'm telling you, this betrayal is getting bigger and uglier by the day. And this cannot get lost. Republicans want to shut the doors
AL,
of
there
one
are
of the
no
biggest
bots here. What are you
healthcare
talking about?
providers
Let's
in
get
the
AL
country.
on the rocket
They
ship.
want to
Since he think
defund
it's bots
Planned
over here,
Parenthood.
we'll holler at
That
you,
is
AL.
wildly
Have an
that is wildly
unsafe trip
harmful
into the
and
stratosphere.
wildly
Goodbye.
unpopular. It would shutter at least 200 health centers that provide a wide spectrum of care, including cancer screenings, pap smears, birth control for millions of women. And let's not forget, Republicans are cutting nutrition assistance too. This big, ugly betrayal would make one of the biggest cuts to SNAP in history.
You just got
talking
deported.
Around a $200 billion cut over the next 10 years. Now, it should be obvious, but that would be devastating for our country and for our kids' future. And yet, Republicans are not giving up on taking dinner off the table, taking school lunch off kids' trays, all so they can shovel tax cuts at billionaires and wealthy corporations. And it is worth underscoring the new red tape in their bill is even targeted at some of our most vulnerable families because it expands work requirements to apply to seniors and parents with kids in school. Mr. President, when my dad, World War II veteran, got sick with multiple sclerosis, he lost his job. He lost his job. My mom was at home, 7 kids she was raising. My dad lost his job, and they had to spend, my mom had to spend some time getting some new skills so she could go back to work and take care of our family. You know what, during that time? We had to rely on food stamps in my family to feed those 7 kids in my family. But under this Republican bill today, because neither of my parents had a job during those few months, my family would not be eligible for SNAP benefits. We would not have even gotten food on our table at the worst time in my family's life. This is wrong. Thanks to those food stamps, my family did get through that rough patch. And all 7 of us kids grew up to give back to our communities. Whether it's a firefighter, a middle school teacher, or even here as a United States Senator. So I can't emphasize enough. Republicans want to cut families from SNAP and Medicaid programs that give people a hand up in hard times. Why? So they can give an enormous handout to the richest people and biggest companies in our country. Oh, and at the same time, they're making it harder to afford groceries and healthcare. I should mention, they are also gutting energy investments in a completely chaotic way that is all but guaranteed to drive away jobs and drive up energy costs for all of American families. And at the same time, in this bill, they're giving billionaires billions of dollars. Republicans are going to give students the short end of the stick. This big mess of a bill would tear away programs and protections that make it possible for many students to pursue a higher education. It eliminates Grad Plus loans. It cuts families off from Parent Plus loans. It punishes students who go into public service or a medical residency, and more. Meanwhile, they are tearing down the guardrails from gutting regulations that protect students whose universities commit fraud, to opening a Pandora's box for Pell Grants with a new loophole that will let low-quality programs suck up our taxpayer dollars. These changes are especially going to hurt students from low-income families and first-generation college students and our veterans. Some of them will have no way to go to college when Republicans take their support away. Some will be driven into predatory private loans they can't afford. And some will get lured into low-quality programs that take their money, waste taxpayer dollars, and leave the student worse off. And if that wasn't enough, if the Secretary of Education wanted to try and stop this kind of fraud and protect students, Republicans will leave them at about as much authority as a school hall monitor. Because in this bill, Republicans prevent any Secretary of Education from making regulations that carry added benefits for borrowers. And it hardly matters if that is a good impact, like saving students money or protecting taxpayer dollars from fraud or making higher education more accessible. Republicans are going to make problems worse and make fixing them even harder. Students in this country should be outraged. And I want to be perfectly clear about something. If Republicans charge ahead with this big, awful mess, which they
big, awful,
seem intent on
ugly
doing,
bill, she called
they can kiss any last shred of credibility goodbye, as we just talked about, when it comes to pretending they care about balancing the budget or addressing the national debt. The idea was already laughable. For the entirety of the 21st century, the biggest driver of the national debt
Ms. Pooh Bear
has
say
been
them energy
tax
bills
cuts
about
that
to go up
Republicans
again.
championed. But now, as we just talked about, they want to put at least $4 trillion, that is trillions with a T, on the national credit card. Why? So they can shower the richest people on the planet with more money. And then they're pretending all the math works and it's kind of easy peasy. If they they can do it if they kick people off health care or take enough meals away from kids or close enough hospitals, or better still, use some absurd accounting gimmick to pretend that billions of dollars in new tax cuts for their billionaire donors actually just don't cost anything. Well, I've got some bad news for Republicans. Your math is terrible, and so's this bill. This thing is very expensive, and you don't have to take my word for it. Ask the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which
But
just
Elon Musk said the same
latest
thing about
version
this bill.
of
He
this
said
bill
it's not
will add
good.
$4 trillion to the debt with just over the next 10 years. If Republicans want to ignore them, you can also ask the fiscal hawks at the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. They calculate that
All
the
right,
House
Craig,
bill
I'll say your
adds
name.
$5
You just got
trillion
deported.
to
Let's
our
get
debt
Craig out the
when
chat.
you
He's
include
spamming the
interest
chat
payments
saying,
and the
say my
cost of
name.
making
We
temporary
talking about
provisions
things
in
that are
this
going
bill
on in the
permanent.
world, not people saying
And
your
we are
name,
told
Craig.
the Senate
We'll holler
bill
at you,
is
Craig.
even
Got fired on your
less
day off.
fiscally responsible. Everyone agrees this thing is not beautiful, but it is recklessly big, and it won't just increase the debt, it will blow it up. Mr. President, this may very well be the most expensive bill in history. I say may because Republicans are still planning changes. We have not yet gotten the final bill. They already cut out even more taxes for multinational corporations. SNAP benefits, they're still on the chopping block. Healthcare, still on the chopping block. In fact, they want to cut Medicaid even more painfully. We may not know how expensive the Republicans will be in the end, but we know who is paying for it. Paying for it is you, working families. And it is important for people to know, as bad as this bill is, Republicans were trying to make it even worse. Now, Democrats have been fighting them every step of the way, and we have notched a few important wins by challenging every single provision we possibly could under the Senate rules.
Misspell cuss words in the chat, guy.
Democrats were successful in getting out. Because if Republicans had their way, not only would this bill take away more food from our struggling families or shutter even more hospitals and kick even more people off their health insurance, it would have also sold off all of our public lands. And if instead of just slashing CFPB funding, it would have completely shuttered the doors of a very important federal watchdog that protects Americans from getting scammed. If Republicans had their way, this bill would make
Dan
it easier
says
to buy
the
gun
big beautiful
silencers,
bill
harder
actually
to get
stands
your
for
earned income
bigger
tax
bank
credit,
for
or pay off
billionaires.
your student loan, and effectively impossible to get insurance plans on the marketplace that cover abortion care. If Republicans had their way, this bill would have also given Trump more power to deny funding to our constituents on a whim and less power for the courts to stop him. We're talking about a whole smorgasbord of really awful, unpopular ideas and policies
Kevin
that would have
says
hurt our
lies.
families and weakened our democracy. Ideas that were this close to making it into this bill. But Republicans did not have their way. Democrats have been fighting back at every single step. We got those provisions tossed in the shredder, and we are still doing our darndest to send the rest of the bill to the shredder as well. Now, let's be clear. When we talk about how unpopular this bill is with the American
This
people,
woman done read about 100 pages. Lord have mercy, hurry
this
up.
bill polls like garbage because it is garbage. That's why it should go nowhere except a trash bin. Democrats are going to keep pushing back on this monstrosity with absolutely everything we've got at every step we can. We're not going to stand by as Republicans shutter hospitals so the richest people in the country can build another vacation home. We are not going to sit around and let Republicans kick millions of people off of their insurance and raise working families' premiums so corporate executives can get a bigger bonus. And we are not going to be silent as Republicans take food away from struggling families so they can help billionaires fuel up their private jets. We're going to keep speaking up, we're going to keep pushing back, and we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what is going on here. This bill is deeply unpopular, that much is clear, but if Republicans keep pushing for this disaster, buckle up, because we are only going to keep getting louder and louder about how big this is, how ugly it is, and it's only going to get more unpopular with the folks back home as these provisions are enacted if this bill passes. I'm pretty astounded by how far some Republicans are trying to stick their heads in the sand on this. One Republican senator told their concerned constituents, and I quote,
Let's go, Ozzy.
"We're all going to die." Well, maybe that's a better name for the bill. At least it's more honest. Because when you take health care away from people, when you make it harder to get, when you make it harder to afford, when you close the only hospital for miles, yeah, you're right, people will die. You'd think my colleagues would show a bit more concern about that. Instead, that senator actually doubled down, and in a response video, she filmed walking through a cemetery. I don't know how you get out of touch that much to misunderstand this, but
102
let me be
pages.
clear about something to our Republicans. Whistling past the graveyard is a metaphor to stop ignoring dangers. It is not a literal messaging suggestion.
What's up, Laura?
And if you thought Republicans couldn't be any more dismissive to their own constituents, this week another Republican senator who was speaking about people voicing their concerns about these Medicaid cuts that said they will, quote, people will get over it. Mr. President, I have news for every one of my Republican colleagues who is trying to deny the reality of this bill and pretend the fairy tales they are telling themselves are true. When someone's local hospital closes, they don't get over it. When someone's kid is kicked off health care, they do not get over it. And if Republicans don't want to take my word for it, they can listen to the doctor I spoke with who warned when patients go uninsured, they delay care and it increases costs for everyone. Instead of paying $10 for diabetic medication, we'll pay $10,000 for an amputation. Or Republicans can actually read the countless letters I'm getting from my constituents, sharing their stories. Quote, my dad is a double amputee. He relies on Medicaid. Without Medicaid, we couldn't get my kids anti-seizure medication. Or I'm a full-time caregiver for my daughter with cerebral palsy, or my son with spina bifida, or my elderly mother. And this bill threatens to kick them off their health care and the support services they rely on to survive. Or better yet, Republicans can go out and talk to their own constituents, because I have no doubt they will hear similar stories. They will even come to you. Advocates have been here in DC all week. I've seen them in the halls. I've heard them from my office. And now Republicans can listen to the people across the country who are warning them about this bill, and they can do the right thing and abandon this effort. Or they can keep ignoring them, but make no mistake, in the end, the American people will have their voices and their votes heard. Because at the end of the day, this bill, this monstrosity of a bill, is all in the goal of a tax break for multi-billionaires and corporations And the way they pay for it is by taking away your health care and your nutrition, facts, the things your family or your neighbors or people you know rely on. And that's just wrong. It's un-American, and we're fighting back. Thank you, Mr.
Lord,
President.
that was long. All right, so we heard Congress basically talking about the big, beautiful bill, man. You know, we just heard from the Democrats. You know, that lady right there, she kind of burnt me out. We heard from President Trump himself. He most definitely spoke on the big, beautiful bill. We heard from Elon. Elon said he was against this big, beautiful bill. I put a poll in the chat that asked if Congress should pass it, and out of 4,100 votes, the people in this chat, 57% said no, they should not pass it, and 42% said they should pass it. So it looks like the chat is voting that this bill should not pass. They do not like it. The Democrats most definitely said that it only benefits rich people. It goes to cut off health care, you know, Medicaid, food stamps for some people, you know, in which some American people, not just immigrants, depend on a day-to-day basis to survive, guys. I'm just saying, you know, so per my chat, they say that this bill should not pass. I seen a lot of people in the comments that said that it should pass. We'll keep an eye on it to see what happens. That's all we can do is watch it, and I most definitely report on it to those that are interested in it. Shout out to everybody that pulled up today in order to see what everybody had to say about this big, beautiful bill, or the big, beautiful, what she say, the big, ugly bill, as the Democrats call it. Shout out to everybody that subscribed to the channel. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, man. This is Everything News, and we most definitely cover everything news. We most definitely are an unbiased channel. We present all information as it comes from both sides if we're able, but we have most definitely run out of time today. You know, consider getting a membership on the channel if you like the content that's being displayed. I appreciate each and every one of you. Anybody that's under super chat or a super gift, a super chat or a gift, I appreciate you. Shout out to my sidewalk team, all my moderators for making sure that the chat runs smooth. And until I see y'all again, make sure y'all stay safe out there in the real world. So as more information is presented, I will most definitely present it to you. I hope you enjoyed your time here, because I enjoy each and every one of y'all. And with that being said, it's time for me to make my grand exit. Y'all already know how this go. Sidewalk gang, checking out. I see y'all on the next one. Y'all make sure y'all be good. I'm gone.